It's always been the same story, etched deep into my mind since I was small. The 3-year famine my grandmother lived through, the way they scrounged for every root, every scrap of anything edible just to stay alive. Her voice would tremble as she spoke of hunger and greed, of how quickly everything could vanish. That fear settled into my bones early, a quiet, gnawing worry that never really went away. By the time I was 10, I was already saving every cent I could get. Pocket money, small gifts from relatives, and buying what I knew would keep. Packs of instant noodles, tins of sardines and corned beef, anything with a long shelf life. When my parents found out, they scolded me at first, thinking I was hoarding pointlessly. But I looked them straight in the eye and said, I won't waste a thing. I just don't want to suffer like Grandma did. They sighed then. Maybe they remembered their own hard days too. They saw I was serious, responsible, and never threw food away. So they let me be. Later, my dad even built me a sturdy wooden pantry, and sometimes they'd come home with extra supplies to add to my shelves. When I entered university, I grew bolder. I started buying medicine too, painkillers, antiseptics, bandages, vitamins, even took minor medical courses just to understand first aid and what each remedy was for. I didn't pursue it fully. My heart belonged to music, which brought me peace even when the world felt rough. I studied music, then worked as an assistant at a music company. People could be difficult there, coworkers and artists alike had their sharp edges, but music kept me calm. My parents paid for a small apartment for me instead of a dorm. I preferred it that way. I wasn't being selfish, I just knew how cruel people could be, and I needed space for my supplies, safe and undisturbed. I stayed there even after I started working. Every chance I got, I prepared more. One day, an overwhelming urge to stock up hit me. It was my day off, so I went all out, hauled a mini freezer home, and filled it with pork of every cut: chicken, fresh fish, seafood, beef. I bought sacks of rice, flour, potatoes, sweet potatoes, canned fruits, especially peaches, more instant noodles, vegetables, big tins of cooking oil, seasonings, herbs, tea, coffee, milk both powdered and liquid, hygiene supplies. Toothbrush, toothpaste, soap, shampoo and conditioner, laundry detergent, dishwashing liquids and sponges, tissues, sanitary pads. I got soda, chocolates, candies, more medicine, trays of egg, matches and flashlights, until my pockets were empty. I told my parents to do the same, stay alert, keep their larders full. Then 2020 came, and the pandemic turned the world upside down. Panic spread faster than the virus. Store shelves emptied in hours. People fought over basic goods. But me? I was fine. I worked from home, and, honestly, I was glad. No more crowded commutes, no need to deal with unkind people. I had everything I needed. That night, exhausted but content, I fell into a deep sleep. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in my warm apartment anymore. I was lying on a hard bed with a worn-out mattress. The room was small, just a simple cabinet, a rickety desk and chair, and me. My heart raced as my eyes landed on the calendar on the wall. July 1970. A flood of memories hit me all at once. My name now was Yang Yue, close to my old name, Yang Wei. I was 18 years old, and in 4 days, I was being sent to the countryside up north as a volunteer. I had no choice. My parents had died 7 years ago, leaving me behind. My father's older sister, my aunt, had moved her whole family in, pretending to take care of me. But their kindness didn't last. They pushed me into the tiny storage room, gave my bright bedroom to my cousin, and turned the rest of the house into theirs. I became their unpaid servant, scrubbing floors, cooking, cleaning. I stayed quiet for a long time, hurt and grieving until the day I snapped. I secretly set aside my own food, mixed ash and dirt into the meals I served them, then ran outside crying loud enough for neighbors to hear and complain when they tried to beat me. They hated me for it, but they couldn't easily hurt me openly anymore. Now I understood why. In 3 days, on my 19th birthday, they planned to sell me. I heard them talking, sell me off as a ghost bride to a wealthy family. They'd be paid well and I'd be gone forever. My mother's parents were all gone. Her 3 brothers were too busy with their own lives to care. My father's parents were old and favored their other children. I was truly alone. As for the original Yue, she passed away in her sleep just like me. Based from her memories, she just came home and slept until I woke up in her body. Suddenly, a glowing light appeared in the air before me, hovering softly. One word shone clearly: storage. My heart hammered against my ribs. I reached out and touched it. In an instant, I was standing inside a bright room. Shelves stretched high and wide, lined perfectly with everything I'd ever gathered in my past life. Neat rows of cans, boxes, bottles, sacks of rice and flour. I walked through, breathless. There was my mini freezer, but instead of meat, it held blocks of ice, still humming as if plugged in. Yet when I looked at the glass containers, the meats were there: fresh pork, chicken, fish, seafood, beef, no longer frozen but cool and perfect. Vegetables were crisp, fruits bright. Everything was exactly as I'd left it, but better. I thought of my parents back in 2020, and I sent a silent prayer that they were safe and well. My throat felt dry, so I reached for a cola. I twisted the cap and drank it down, sweet, bubbly, refreshing. When I looked back at the shelf, the empty space where the cola had been was filled again, exactly like before. I gasped and grabbed a chocolate bar. The moment I took it, another appeared in its place. Infinite, I realized. I had infinite supplies. Enough to last 100 lifetimes. I calmed myself and kept exploring. My medicines and vitamins were all arranged neatly, clearly labeled. I also saw my other supplies: hygiene products, laundry detergents, dishwashing liquids and sponges, sanitary pads, tissue rolls, matches, and lighters. In one corner stood 3 large trash cans with labels. I tossed the empty cola bottle and chocolate wrapper into one. They vanished instantly. No mess, no waste. It was perfect. But I wasn't safe yet. I needed thick blankets and warm-down jackets. The north was freezing, and I had nothing suitable here. I stepped out of the storage space and back into the small room. I checked my pockets and the small bundle by the bed. I still had 5 yuan and the standard travel provisions given to volunteers. It wasn't enough. I took a deep breath, straightened my back, and began to plan. Since I needed money and valid ration tickets to get by in this time, I decided to sell some of my food from the storage, things like fine flour, polished rice, fresh eggs, tender cuts of meat, and clean fish. These were valuable goods anyone would be glad to have, and trading them would get me the cash and official coupons I needed to buy supplies. I also resolved not to leave this house empty-handed. Everything my parents had left behind, their clothes, their personal belongings, had long since been taken, sold off, or worn out by my aunt's family. Even their steady jobs at the local factory had been seized. They'd stripped this place bare for their own gain. So before I left for good, I'd gather whatever sturdy kitchenware I could carry. They'd taken almost everything, but maybe a few pots, pans, or bowls were still tucked away somewhere. And I'd take back what was mine by right, by sneaking out whatever cash I could find from them. As for my own old clothes, I didn't bother. My cousin had claimed them all and worn them like they'd always belonged to her. I'd rather buy new fabric or ready-made clothes myself anyway. Besides, I knew how to sew well enough to make whatever I needed. There was one more advantage I had: all those survival videos I'd binged endlessly in my past life on shelter building, finding water, preserving food, staying warm, and defending myself. I hoped they'd actually be practical here. I'd have to adapt as I went. It was already late afternoon, and the house was quiet. My aunt and her whole family were out, probably feasting and celebrating early, counting their chickens before they hatched, convinced they'd soon have a fortune. Perfect. I slipped out of my cramped room and padded quietly down the hall toward my aunt and uncle's bedroom. My first stop: find their hidden cash and valuables. The door was locked, but I wasn't worried. I'd picked up enough little tricks over the years, and with a bit of careful maneuvering, the lock gave way easily. I stepped inside, heart steady, but mind sharp. I searched systematically: cabinets, drawers, under piles of bedding, inside old boxes. They thought they were clever hiding things away, but they were far from careful enough. Right under the mattress, tucked deep in a gap in the bed frame, I struck gold, a thick stack of yuan bills and a bundle of ration coupons. I didn't hesitate. I counted quickly, 500 yuan in total, plus tickets for grain, cloth, oil, and meat. I left only one single coupon behind. I smoothed everything back exactly as I'd found it, pushed the stack back into its hiding spot, arranged the bedding and furniture so nothing looked out of place. A dry, quiet laugh escaped my lips. They thought they'd outsmarted me, but they had no idea who they were dealing with now. I slipped out of the room, closed and locked the door again, and hurried back to my own small space, clutching my newfound fortune. Back inside my tiny room, I was eager to test something. Could I stow the money and coupons directly into my storage space with just a thought? I flicked my finger first, half expecting a magical reaction, but nothing happened. I tried again, this time clutching the cash and ration slips tight in my palms and whispering firmly, "Store." In the blink of an eye, they vanished from my hands completely. My heart leaped. I closed my eyes and focused, and in the next breath, I was standing inside my vast storage room. There, in the corner where nothing had been before, stood a sturdy wooden table with several deep drawers. I pulled open the top one, and there they were, my 500 yuan and the bundle of ration coupons, resting neatly inside. It was perfect, safer than any hiding spot in that hateful house. I remembered my household registration under my bed, so I went out to put it safely in my storage, too. Now I was ready. My next goal, find the black market. Outside, the sun was already dipping below the rooftops, painting the sky in soft shades of orange and gray. My aunt and her greedy brood still hadn't returned. This was the perfect window of opportunity. I slipped out quietly, heading toward the old market district and winding into the narrow, shadowed alleyways where I knew unlicensed dealings usually happened in Shanghai back in these days. But once among the maze of lanes, I realized I didn't know the exact way. I was beginning to feel a little lost when I spotted an elderly woman sitting on a stone step, wrapped in a faded blue apron. I approached her cautiously. "Good evening, Granny," I greeted in a low voice, then leaned in to whisper, "Could you tell me where the black market is?" She looked me up and down with sharp, wary eyes. "Black market? What nonsense are you talking about, girl? You must be hungry to be rambling like that." I didn't lose heart. I reached into my pocket, where I'd secretly stashed a handful of candies from my storage earlier, and held out 5 of them. They were glossy, wrapped in bright paper unlike anything common around here. The old woman's eyes lit up instantly. She stared at the sweets in my hand, clearly not ordinary local fare, but she didn't ask questions. Her tone shifted at once, dropping to a hushed, helpful murmur. "Go 2 blocks ahead, then turn right," she directed quickly. "But mind you, they charge a fee. 2 yuan if you're buying, 4 yuan if you're selling." "Thank you so much," I said gratefully and hurried off in the direction she pointed. I found the place not long after, tucked between weathered brick buildings and veiled by the deepening dusk. I braced myself and took a deep breath to steady my nerves, then walked straight toward the entrance. 2 burly men stood guard there, arms crossed, eyes scanning every newcomer. I didn't hesitate, pulled out 4 yuan from my pocket and handed it over. They took the money without a word, no questions asked, though their eyes lingered a moment on me. I had no bags, no baskets, nothing in my hands at all to show I carried goods. But they didn't bother stopping me or asking why. As long as the fee was paid, they didn't care what went on inside. I walked right past them and stepped into the market. Surprisingly, it wasn't chaotic or messy at all. The space was neat and orderly, with rows of stalls separating sellers and buyers, voices kept low and respectful to avoid drawing unwanted attention. Dim lanterns hung here and there, casting soft golden light over the merchandise and wary faces. I didn't bother keeping my head down or hiding my face. There was no need. In just a few days, I'd be gone from this place forever, far away to the north, and no one here would ever see me again. I wandered slowly, observing the trades and listening to the quiet exchanges, until I stopped beside a stall piled high with rolls of fabric in muted shades. I leaned in close and asked in a hushed tone, "Excuse me, where could I sell goods quickly and safely?" The man looked me over carefully, young, fair-skinned, tall, clearly not the usual type wandering these shadowed lanes. "What is it you're selling?" he asked, his voice equally low. "Meat, fish, rice, and fine flour," I whispered back. His eyes widened slightly, and he studied me again with new attention. Supplies like that were rare and precious here, especially in fresh condition. He leaned even closer, his tone turning eager yet cautious. "If you're willing, I'll buy some from you. I can pay in ration coupons and cloth, since that's what I deal in here." I nodded immediately. "That works perfectly. Coupons and cloth are exactly what I need: thick fabric, warm quilts, down jackets, anything sturdy enough to withstand freezing weather." He smiled, pleased we'd reached an understanding. "I'll take 3 gin of pork, 3 gin of fish, 5 gin of rice, and 5 gin of flour." "Deal," I said. "Where should we make the exchange?" "I don't carry things openly here, it's safer that way." 3 blocks east from here," he answered promptly. "Look for a plain gray wooden door. Knock 3 times, pause briefly, then knock twice more." A spark of realization went through me. That neighborhood was exactly where I'd met the old lady. They must be related, part of the same trusted circle running these lanes. "I know the place," I told him. "I'll go get my goods and meet you there shortly." He agreed and quickly began clearing his goods. I quickly ducked into a shadowed, empty lane and slipped straight into my storage space. I gathered up the bags of rice and flour first, then I smacked my forehead and laughed at my own carelessness. I had no weighing scales, no baskets, no cloth sacks to hold the pork and fish. How could I have forgotten that? I made a mental note. Next time I plan to sell anything, I must prepare proper containers and tools first. Deciding not to delay any longer, I took only the rice and flour and hurried toward the address the cloth seller gave me. I knocked exactly as he'd instructed, and the gray door swung open almost instantly. He greeted me with a bright smile, but I spoke up first. "I'm sorry, I don't have anything to carry the meat and fish in yet. Could I borrow a basket?" He chuckled warmly and went to fetch one right away. "I'll leave the rice and flour here first," I said, then turned and ran back to retrieve the rest. Once I had the pork and fish neatly in the basket, I rushed back to him. When I stepped inside the courtyard, he introduced himself. "Just call me Brother Xiao." I gave a shy smile and admitted I didn't get a chance to weigh anything. "Could you do it properly?" He laughed again and brought out a sturdy balance scale. Item by item he weighed them, and it turned out I'd brought even more. 5 extra gin of meat and fish, plus a little extra on the rice and flour too. He ran his fingers through the grains and ran a hand over the fine flour. His eyes lit up seeing how pristine and high quality everything was, far better than what usually circulated here. "This is top-grade stuff," he praised. He handed over 3 bolts of fine cloth in rich, varied colors, tying them securely with thick rope. "Best I've seen in ages," he repeated, then leaned in and asked, "Do you have more goods like this?" "I do," I said gratefully. "I plan to sell more. I need to trade for supplies and essentials." "Come with me to see the boss," he offered. I nodded and let him carry the cloth for me. It was heavier than it looked, and I didn't mind at all. We walked for about 10 minutes until we reached a sturdy door carved with faint patterns. Brother Xiao knocked in a distinct rhythm, and a man appeared. Brother Xiao whispered briefly to him, and we were led inside. "The boss is in the usual room," our guide said. Brother Xiao ushered me into a cozy room where a middle-aged man sat calmly sipping tea. He looked up with a welcoming smile. Brother Xiao spoke first. "She has goods far better than what we usually see." The boss gestured to a wooden chair. "Sit, have some tea." I thanked him and sat. He studied me calmly. "What do you have to offer?" "Rice, flour, fresh meat and fish," I said clearly. "I also have fruits, canned peaches, watermelon, apples, oranges." He blinked, clearly stunned. Those were luxuries in this time. But he didn't ask where they came from. No one here ever questioned origins. It was an unspoken rule. "How would you like to be paid?" he asked. "Cash, ration coupons, or any supplies I need," I told him frankly. "I'm being sent up north in a few days, so I'm gathering what I must." He chuckled low in his throat. Aren't you afraid I might scam a young girl like you? I smiled back, calm and steady. I trust you, even though we've never met. He threw his head back and laughed heartily. Even Brother Shao looked on, amazed by my composure. Fair enough, the boss said, growing serious again. Here's what I'm looking for. 50 jin each of pork and fish, 500 jin of rice and 500 jin of flour, 50 jin of assorted fruits and 30 canned peaches. He watched closely for my reaction. The numbers were large, after all, but I simply committed every figure to memory and nodded. I can provide all of that. I'll have everything ready and bring it tomorrow at the same time, I agreed. Then, Brother Shao handed me my bundle of cloth as I stepped back out into the fading light. I walked quickly, keeping an eye out for anyone following, and slipped into another quiet alleyway to enter my storage space. I set the 3 bolts of cloth neatly atop the drawer where I kept my money and coupons. Glancing over my shelves, I smiled in relief. Every single item I'd taken earlier was fully replenished, as if I'd never touched them at all. Then my stomach rumbled loudly. I laughed and headed for the snack corner, chips and biscuits, soda and water. I enjoyed a quick, satisfying meal, feeling fully recharged. After checking carefully to make sure no one was nearby, I stepped out again and made my way quietly back toward the house. I walked home slowly, the streets wrapped in deep darkness. The moon hung high and bright, its pale glow spilling over the rooftops and paving my way, helping me steady my racing thoughts. As soon as I neared the entrance gate, I heard my aunt's shrill voice cutting through the quiet, sharp and accusing. Where has that girl been all this time? Roaming outside late like this, what kind of reputation will she have? Then came my cousin Lin Chui's tone, cold and smug. Mother, just leave her alone. Her days of running free are numbered anyway. There's no need to fuss over her now. A bitter laugh echoed silently in my chest. Go ahead and enjoy your triumph now, I thought. You won't be celebrating for long, none of your schemes are going to work out the way you imagine. I pushed the door open and stepped inside, arranging my face into a look of exhaustion and dejection. Seeing me, my aunt instantly switched her scowl to an exaggerated mask of concern, rushing forward. Oh, Yue. Where have you been so late? Have you had anything to eat yet? I shook my head, voice soft and weary. I went out to look for work, but I had no luck. No one wanted to hire me. She patted my shoulder with feigned warmth, her fingers pressing just a little too hard. Don't worry, there will be other chances. Come now, you must be starved. Eat something and rest. I nodded obediently and let her guide me toward the kitchen. Their dinner was long finished. The table was wiped clean, bowls stacked carelessly. She boiled a small pot of noodles quickly, cracked 1 egg into it, and set the plain bowl before me. Thank you, Auntie, I said politely, picking up the chopsticks and eating with apparent gratitude, head bowed. But while I chewed slowly, my eyes were scanning the room in silence. I noted every item in my mind, calculating what was sturdy enough to carry with me, what would serve me well when I reached the countryside. These will come with me, I resolved. You've used my things long enough. Soon, I'll take back every last bit of what belongs to me. The next day, my aunt banged furiously on my door early, yelling for me to get up, but I didn't stir. It seemed all the exhaustion from arriving in this strange world had finally caught up, weighing me into a deep, dreamless sleep. When I finally woke, the house was silent, they'd all stormed out in a huff, and there wasn't a scrap of food left on the table for me. I didn't care one bit. I slipped into my storage space and took out a slice of fresh pork, garlic, crisp cabbage, and seasonings. Out in the kitchen, I arranged the coal briquettes and got the fire going. Cool, I murmured. I'd never cooked with coal in my past life, but this body moved with easy familiarity, knowing exactly how to tend the flame. I sliced the pork into thin strips, chopped the garlic and cabbage finely. I fried the meat first until its rich oil bubbled out, then tossed in the garlic and covered the wok to let the flavors infuse. While it simmered, I washed the cabbage, added it in, and sprinkled in salt and spices. The savory aroma drifted through the kitchen, making my stomach growl. I didn't feel like eating rice right then, so I ducked back into storage to look for buns and noticed something new I'd missed before. There was bread here too. In my old life, I rarely bought bread because it spoiled so fast, but now I held a soft, fragrant loaf in my hands and felt nothing but gratitude. I hurried back to finish cooking. When it was done, I piled everything into a big bowl. I layered the pork and cabbage between two slices of bread like a sandwich and took a satisfying bite. This would be perfect with cola, I thought, and a can appeared right on the table. My heart leaped. Had I just found another way to retrieve things? I was thrilled. I ate happily, washing it all down with sweet fizzing cola. When I finished, I let out a loud burp and laughed aloud at myself. I scrubbed the wok, bowl, and chopstick spotless, leaving not a trace of my meal. I returned the leftover bread to storage and tossed the empty can into the trash bin there. It vanished instantly. Then I threw open the windows to clear the air and hurried back to my room. It was time to test my discovery. I closed my eyes and focused. 500 gene of rice. 5 sturdy bags materialized on the floor, each clearly marked 100 gene. I could barely contain my joy. I rushed over to run my hands over the rough sackcloth and feel the weight of the grain inside. Store, I said softly, and the bags vanished back into my space. Next I thought of 500 gene of flour, and exactly like the rice, 5 neat bags appeared. I stored them away too, grinning from ear to ear. I stepped into the storage room to check. Sure enough, the rice and flour were stacked apart in a corner, ready to go. This was perfect. No need to hunt for a weighing scale anymore. Everything came pre-measured exactly as I needed. Curious, I tested further. 50 gene of pork. I said aloud, and sealed bags of fresh meat appeared right in front of me, weighing exactly 50 gene together. I called out for 50 gene of fish, 20 gene of watermelon, 15 gene of apples, 15 gene of oranges, and finally 30 canned peaches. One by one they materialized, flawless and fresh. I arranged them neatly beside the rice and flour, ready for delivery. Satisfied, I exited my storage, washed up, and changed into simple, practical clothes. It was time to head out, find a cart to hire, so I could transport everything to the boss right on schedule. I set out toward the market, keeping a steady pace as I looked for someone with a cart to hire. After walking a good distance, I spotted an old man beside his vegetable stall with a wooden cart parked nearby. I walked over, greeted him politely, and asked, "Grandpa, may I hire your cart for the whole day?" "I'll pay 20 yuan." The old man's eyes went wide with surprise, and he hesitated, twisting the hem of his worn jacket. I knew it was a generous offer, but I needed to be sure he'd agree quickly. 30 yuan, all in cash, I added, pulling out 10 more coins. He nodded immediately. 30 yuan was a fortune in these times, and letting out the cart meant easy money with no risk. He scrambled to his feet and pulled the cart right up to me, fast as he could, as if afraid I might change my mind. I handed over the coins, confirmed we were set, and went on my way. I found a quiet, hidden alleyway and waited until the sun dipped low and shadows covered the street. Once it was dark enough to stay unnoticed, I began bringing everything out from my storage, bags of rice and flour, meat and fish, fruit and canned peaches, arranging them neatly on the cart. Standing back to look at the pile, I still felt it wasn't quite enough to make the best impression. I focused my mind again. Large tin of cooking oil, small bag of salt, sugar, soy sauce in a jar, and all kinds of spices appeared one by one. The seasonings were already sealed in small, sturdy bags, so I didn't need to repack them. I'd simply tell the boss I'd thrown them in as extra, a little gift to show goodwill. I covered everything tightly with a cloth I found at home, concealing the wealth underneath, and set off confidently toward our meeting place. I headed straight for the destination, twilight deepening over the streets as the sky turned soft indigo. I spotted Brother Xiao waiting by the entrance the moment I came into view. His face lit up instantly, and he hurried over to lend a hand steadying the cart. "I've been thinking about it all day," he said with a sheepish grin as we walked. The goods from yesterday were incredible, especially the tender fish and fragrant rice. "I really regret now that I didn't give you a better deal right from the start." I chuckled lightly and shook my head. It's truly fine, Brother Xiao. We struck a fair bargain, and I'm perfectly content. We made our way inside to Bastian's quarters. He was already there, waiting calmly. We stepped forward to greet him respectfully. He walked over to the cart and pulled back the cloth covering to inspect the load. Before he could speak, I smiled and said, I took the liberty of adding some extra cooking oil tin and assorted seasonings, things you'll surely find useful. Please consider them a small gift from me. He glanced up, a low, warm chuckle rumbling in his chest. You're a thoughtful one, aren't you? He nodded sharply at his men. Bring out what we agreed on and make it proper. They returned promptly with the payment. A total of 2,800 yuan in cash, a fair but slightly higher rate fitting for premium goods on the black market back then, plus industrial tickets. Then came the supplies: thick, fluffy cotton quilts, sturdy down jackets lined for bitter cold, stacks of wool socks, durable metal wash basins, and other daily necessities fit for surviving the northern winter. Everything was laid out clearly for me to check. I thanked Bastian and Brother Xiao sincerely, feeling confident that I was fully prepared for the journey ahead. After leaving the place, I slipped into a quiet dark alley once more, and with one word and everything, cash, coupons, supplies, even the sturdy wooden cart, vanished into my storage space. I made my way calmly back home. As soon as I stepped through the door, Lin Chui greeted me with an unusually sweet smile. You're back. Come along. Eat something and rest, she said, leading me toward the kitchen. Her mother was already there, wiping her hands and pretending to fuss over the stove. Seeing me, her face lit up with fake warmth. How did it go today? Any luck finding work? I gave the same reply as yesterday. I walked around everywhere, but no one wanted to hire me. She patted my shoulder gently, her tone overly comforting. Don't rush. Good things come to those who wait, you'll see. I nodded and ate quietly, keeping my head down. When I set down my bowl, the mother and daughter exchanged a knowing look. Your 19th birthday is the day after tomorrow, Auntie said, her voice sugary smooth. What would you like to eat? Tell us, we'll make it nice. I smiled simply. Braised pork, dumplings, and soft steamed buns, please. They beamed. That's easy. We'll have them ready for lunch that day. Thank you, I said, rising to wash my bowl and chopsticks, but Lin Chui hurried over and took them from my hands. Let me do it. You must be exhausted. I didn't argue. I am. I'll go rest now. I turned away without another word, locking the door of my small room behind me. I changed into my only set of sleep clothes, then sat on the bed to plan for tomorrow. First thing, return the hired wooden cart to the old man. Then head straight to the shops. I needed practical things: casual daily clothes, durable work outfits, soft undergarments, sturdy cloth shoes, and thick winter boots for the north. Also large cloth bags to pack my things. I'd only put one quilt out for show. The rest would stay safe in my storage. I'd also buy thick oilcloth and sturdy craft paper to patch up windows and keep out wind and cold. I'd already made up my mind. I wouldn't squeeze into the crowded dormitory with other sent-down youth. I'd find my own small, quiet place to stay. I also planned to pick up kerosene lamps and fuel, a solid metal lunchbox, and as many coal briquettes as I could carry, essential for cooking and heating where I was going. I traced the faint patterns on my window frame in the dim light. Everything was falling into place. In 2 days, I'd officially turn 19, and the life they thought they'd trapped me in would be over. That night I couldn't sleep, my skin felt tight and itchy. I hadn't had a proper bath since arriving in this world. I'd only wiped myself down with a damp cloth. I knew I had fine soap, shampoo, and conditioner safe in my storage, but I couldn't risk bringing them out yet, not without real privacy and running water. Quietly, I slipped out of my room to check the bathing situation. I knew the bathrooms here were shared, but I still hoped they might be a little better than I feared. As I crept past my aunt's door, I heard low voices inside, so I leaned closer, the thin walls letting every word carry clearly. Why wait until she turns 19 before handing her over as a ghost bride? That was my young cousin Lin Yan's impatient tone. Because that's the family's condition, my aunt replied smoothly. They already sent 200 yuan as advance payment. We'll get the rest once she's delivered. They insisted she must look presentable, not thin or sickly looking. So we've got to feed her well these last 2 days. A cold smirk touched my lips. Now it all made perfect sense why they'd waited for my birthday. They planned to hand me over that very night, whether I agreed or not. Not going to happen, I vowed silently. I'd play along a little longer, eat their celebratory meal, then vanish before they knew what hit them. I hurried away toward the communal bathhouse, only to find it filthy, drafty, and utterly run down. I couldn't bring myself to use it. Disappointed, I turned back to my room. I lay awake thinking ahead to the north. Conditions there would be even harsher, and I'd face the same problems. I desperately needed my own private way to wash up. Suddenly, a faint holographic glow appeared before me. Storage upgrade. I pressed it instantly, finding myself back inside my spacious storeroom. The space felt noticeably larger, and there stood a solid wooden door I'd never noticed before. My heart raced as I pulled it open. My eyes instantly filled with tears of joy. It was a fully equipped private bathroom. Bright ceiling light lit up clean white walls, a large mirror above a sink, a flush toilet, a spacious shower area with a deep tub, and even a washing machine tucked neatly in the corner. I twisted the taps, clear cold and hot water flowed perfectly. Heaven! I didn't hesitate. I grabbed my soap and shampoo, took the long, hot shower I'd dreamed of, scrubbed away every trace of grime and worry, then brushed my teeth until I felt fresh and brand new. The next morning, I woke up feeling completely refreshed, earlier than usual. I decided to cook porridge for them one last time, a final act before I moved on. In the kitchen, I was busy stirring the pot when my aunt walked in. She beamed at me, feigning delight. What a good girl. Up early to help. I smiled politely back and kept cooking. When it was done, I ate only a small bowl myself, then told her, I'm going out again to see if I can find any work. Good luck, she called, sounding satisfied. I headed straight for the market. First stop, return the hired cart. I ducked into an empty alley, focused my mind, and the wooden cart appeared right before me. I wheeled it quickly to where the old vegetable seller waited. I greeted him and said I was finished with it. He beamed, accepted it without a single question, and waved me off. Next, I walked 10 minutes to the large state-run department store. Stepping inside, I saw neat rows of shelves and glass counters displaying everything from fabrics to daily goods. The shop was quiet, with only a handful of customers browsing slowly and carefully. I walked along the shelves and picked out exactly what I knew I would need for a long time ahead, for sturdy sets of thick work clothes made of tough, durable cotton jackets and trousers strong enough to stand up to endless hours in the fields, harsh wind, hot sun, and rough labor. Then I chose 5 casual pieces, simple blouses along with plain matching trousers. Decent, comfortable, and perfect for rest days or quiet evenings at home. Last of all, I selected 5 sets of soft cotton undergarments, enough so I could always keep clean and fresh. Then I added 2 thick towels, 2 pairs of sturdy cloth shoes, 1 pair of lined winter boots. And then spotted proper bedding, so I added 2 thick cotton mattresses to my pile. When I laid this whole neat pile down on the counter, the middle-aged cashier's eyes went wide with shock. She shook her head firmly at once, pushing more than half the clothes back toward me. Comrade, this is far too much. Your cloth coupons could never cover even half of this. Rules are strict. I am not allowed to sell more than one person's yearly quota. I simply cannot agree to this. I kept my smile gentle and calm, glancing quickly around to make sure no other customers or staff were watching closely. Then I quietly slipped a small cloth bag onto the counter between us, filled with sweet milk candies, a rare treat that most children only dreamed of and adults rarely got to taste. Right beside it, I set a tightly sealed glass jar of golden, sweet preserved peaches, something almost impossible to find in ordinary times. I prepared these in this kind of situation. I lowered my voice, speaking softly and earnestly. Auntie, I am being sent far away to the northern frontier to work on a remote state farm. I won't be able to come back home for years, and everyone says supplies up there are even harder to get than in the city. I just want enough clothes to keep myself warm, decent, and able to work properly for the country. Please do me this small favor. These are just little gifts to thank you for your kindness and understanding." The cashier's eyes lingered on the milky candies and the glowing jar of peaches. Her hesitation melted away little by little. She must have thought of her own little ones, who would beam with joy at such sweets, or her family, who had not tasted sweet fruit in a very long time. She looked up at me, gave a quick, quiet nod, and swiftly tucked the gifts under the counter, hidden from view. "All right then," she whispered, a faint, kind smile touching her lips as she pulled the stack of clothes back toward her. "You are going far away to serve our nation. You deserve to have enough to keep yourself well and comfortable." When she finished tallying, she read off clearly. Total, 58 yuan and 60 fin, plus cloth coupons, industrial coupons, and shoe coupons. I counted out the cash and handed over the coupons I'd kept ready. She packed everything neatly, and I nodded my thanks. I slipped into another quiet lane to deposit it all safely into my storage. With that done, I headed straight for the general supply shop further down the street. There I picked up 2 simple but sturdy kerosene lamps with glass chimneys. Once again, I slipped the cashier a small gift, and he quietly agreed to sell me 5 jean of kerosene, far more than the usual monthly allowance. He carefully poured the fuel into large sealed glass jars, handing them over discreetly so no one would notice. I also grabbed thick oil paper perfect for blocking drafts and covering broken windows, 50 kilos of coal briquettes, a solid metal lunchbox with a tight lid, a stack of durable wrapping paper, strong twine for tying bundles, and several heavy enamel basins and cups. I didn't hold back, bought extra of every single item I might need up north. There was no sense risking shortages or going without once I left the city. After paying, I asked the shop assistants to help carry the heavier items out to a quiet, empty alley nearby and thanked them warmly. Once they were gone, I focused my mind and everything lamp, tin cans of kerosene, briquettes, supplies, vanished neatly into my storage. Right then, my stomach let out a loud growl. I was hungry, so I headed straight to a state-run restaurant nearby. I ordered 2 fluffy steamed buns, a plate of dumplings, tender braised pork, a bowl of rice, and fresh stir-fried vegetables. I ate slowly and happily, then ordered an extra bag of pork buns to take with me. Back in the alley, those 2 were safely stored away. I walked home at an easy pace, my mind turning over tomorrow's plans. I got back early, no one was around to bother me. My cousins were off somewhere enjoying summer vacation, and my aunt and uncle were still at the factory. I'd only just graduated high school. It felt strange yet freeing to have the house quiet and empty. I slipped into my storage space to inspect everything. Neat rows of supplies lined the shelves. My new purchases were arranged perfectly alongside my food stock. I spotted the pork buns still warm. I reached out and took one, and in the blink of an eye, another identical bun appeared in its place. My heart raced with delight. So this is how it works, I realized. As long as food stayed here, it replenished endlessly, just like the rest of my stock. This was a miracle. Overjoyed, I grabbed some snacks too. I took an enamel cup, washed it carefully in the shiny bathroom with dish soap, dried it, then dropped in ice cubes and poured myself a can of cola. Sipping and munching happily, I even thought, next time I'll get cake and ice cream too. Then I arranged a soft mattress on one side of the storage room. I decided tomorrow, after the big birthday feast, I'd slip in here and sleep soundly until dawn. I still didn't have proper travel documents, so the best plan was to vanish quietly, let them search the empty room all they wanted. Before packing my bags, I wanted everything fresh and clean. All my clothes, bedding, quilts, even the cloth bags themselves needed washing. I brought them into the bathroom, loaded the automatic washing machine. Thank heavens it worked perfectly, no hanging or drying needed. I added laundry detergent and softener, let it run, and soon everything smelled fresh and was ready to go. I started organizing what I'd carry visibly. Bag 1. One thin but warm quilt, neatly folded and tied tight. Bag 2. 2 casual outfits, 2 durable work suits, 5 sets of undergarments, 3 pairs of thick socks. In my shoulder bag, sturdy lunchbox and an insulated thermos, ready to be filled. I was all set. I'd pack hot water and food soon. Steaming pork buns, bread, snacks, and drinks were already lined up. I'd keep it simple for the journey. Flaunting such good food on the train would only draw unwanted attention and stares from others. Better to blend in and keep my blessings quiet. Once the door was locked behind me, I went to curl up on the bed and fell into a deep, sound sleep. I woke later to the cheerful clatter of bowls and chatter. They were eating dinner. I stood up, deliberately tousled my hair, and rubbed my eyes to look worn out before opening the door. When my aunt caught sight of me, she jumped in feigned surprise and rushed over immediately. Yue, what happened, my child? You look dreadful. I mumbled weakly. I didn't feel well the moment I got home, so I just fell asleep right away. Her face twisted into an exaggerated look of concern. She guided me to the dining table and pushed a bowl toward me. You must have caught a chill. Go to the hospital tomorrow for a proper checkup, just to be safe. She hurried out for a moment, then returned pressing a few bills into my hand for the medical fees. Thank you, I said softly. I only reached for the plate of stir-fried vegetables, picking at them slowly. I'm sorry. I don't have much of an appetite right now. Eat what you can, she said soothingly. Go rest early afterward. I nodded obediently and retreated to my room as soon as I finished. The moment the door clicked shut, I almost burst out laughing. They were so eager to keep me healthy and presentable for their scheme, they'd even given me money of their own free will. I bit my lip to hold it in, then stepped into my storage space to wash my face and brush my teeth with fresh water. Clean and calm, I settled down to sleep again, ready for whatever tomorrow would bring. The next day, I woke up just as my aunt and her family were heading out the door. Remember to go to the hospital quickly, she reminded me, voice thick with fake concern. Then come straight home. We're going to celebrate your birthday properly. I put on a bright, grateful face. I will. Thank you, Auntie. I waved enthusiastically until they turned the corner, then shut the door and leaned back against it with a sigh. I went straight to my storage space, fetched a bottle of clean water, and heated it on the stove. Today felt like a good day to treat myself. Hot tea, soft pork buns, and a pot of dumplings. I busied myself in the kitchen, cooking more dumplings than I could eat. Once done, I'd stow the extras back in my storage and pack a portion into my lunchbox for tomorrow's journey. Everything tasted twice as good knowing it was all mine to enjoy. After eating, I washed up, changed into fresh, presentable clothes, and set out for the market with a single craving in mind: cake and ice cream. I checked every state-run shop until I struck lucky. The ice cream came wrapped in simple paper, nothing like the glossy packaging I remembered from my time, and the texture was coarser, but it still looked wonderful. I stored them safely away, then found a state-run bakery nearby. They actually had Western-style pastries. I bought 2 thick slices of chocolate cake, some cream eclairs, and a box of traditional Chinese pastries, then slipped into a quiet alley to add them to my collection. Satisfied and smiling, I headed back. On the way home, I spotted my aunt and cousin Lin Chui struggling with heavy bags of groceries and supplies they'd bought for the feast. I hurried over. Let me help. Lin Chui brushed me off quickly. No need, you still look pale and sickly. Go rest. Her mother nodded in agreement, so I obediently turned toward my small room and lay on the bed, staring at the ceiling while my mind raced through my plans. By noon, my aunt knocked gently. Yue, lunch is ready. I followed her to the dining table. She piled my bowl high with tender braised pork, placed a steaming stack of dumplings beside it, and set 2 fluffy steamed buns on the side. For a moment, my heart softened. This was the kind of warmth a girl might hope for from family. Tears rolled down my cheeks before I could stop them. In all the memories of the original Yue, I couldn't recall a single time they'd treated her so kindly. But I knew better than to let my guard down. I wasn't the naive girl they'd known. Thank you, Auntie, I said simply, and ate slowly. Glancing up, I caught my uncle watching me from across the table. His eyes were heavy with something like worry. He looked as if he wanted to say something, to warn me somehow. But his shoulders slumped, and he looked away quickly. My aunt ruled this house completely, and he had no spine to stand up to her or go against her plans. When the meal was over, my aunt patted my shoulder. "Go rest now, child. We'll wake you later." I nodded and went back to my room, locking the door firmly behind me. Without a moment's delay, I stepped into the safety of my storage space, lay down on the soft mattress I'd prepared, and waited. Just one more night, and tomorrow I'd be gone forever. As I lay on my soft mattress in the storage space, my mind wandered to what awaited me in the north. I thought about the manual labor I'd likely face, the strangers I'd meet, the bitter cold that would seep into every bone, the rough living conditions. Could I handle hard physical work? I wasn't sure, but I knew I had more than most. Some sent-down youth had rich families to support them, some had a little money saved, others were forced by their parents, and still more, like me, were volunteering to escape something. Compared to all of them, I had my infinite supplies. That alone made me grateful beyond words. With these thoughts floating through my head, I drifted off to sleep. A few hours later, I was jolted awake by loud, frantic banging on my room door. Even through the storage walls, I could hear every sound clearly. My aunt's voice shrilled through the wood. "Yue, are you in there? What's happened to you?" Then came the sound of a lock clicking open. I could picture them all crowding into my tiny room, their faces falling when they saw I wasn't there. Panic erupted immediately. "Find her. Search everywhere. We have to find her no matter what," my aunt shouted. I stretched lazily on the mattress, a small, cold smile touching my lips. I knew exactly what had happened. Earlier, Lin Shui had come to deliver a glass of milk laced with sleeping pills, a classic, predictable trick. When no one answered the door, she'd called her mother, setting off their frantic search. Let them scramble all they wanted. I wasn't going anywhere they could find me. The night passed in a blur of their shouting, footsteps rushing through the house and down the street, calls for my name echoing in the darkness. By midnight, they'd returned, their faces grim. My aunt's expression was particularly long and sour. Through the thin walls, I pieced together what had happened next. They couldn't report me as missing, not when they were terrified the police would investigate and uncover their plan to sell me as a ghost bride. The wealthy family they'd made a deal with would be implicated too, and that was the last thing they wanted. So my aunt had gone to break the news, stammering about how I'd vanished without a trace. But here's what surprised me. The wealthy family didn't get angry. Earlier that same night, another desperate family had arrived with their daughter. She turned 19 just 2 days before, and begged them to take her instead. In their hurry to complete the ritual, they'd accepted her and paid her family handsomely. Hearing this, a wave of sadness washed over me. I felt sorry for that poor girl, another victim of people who cared only for money. I knew I was selfish too, in my own way. I'd escaped by thinking only of myself, by looking out for my own survival first. But there was one difference. I'd never hurt anyone else to get what I wanted, and I'd never willingly involve innocent people in my troubles. I rolled over on the mattress and continued sleeping. I woke up as dawn broke, the light soft and pale inside my storage space. I stepped into the gleaming bathroom for a refreshing shower and brushed my teeth. Breakfast was ready and waiting, steaming pork buns, tender hot dumplings, and a bottle of cool water. I filled my insulated thermos with water, then double-checked my sturdy lunchbox. 2 soft pork buns and 6 piping hot dumplings sat neatly inside, covered tight to keep the warmth in. Everything felt secure and ready. I arranged my bundles, just enough to look proper for a young traveler, not too heavy to manage, and certainly not bulky enough to turn heads. Into my shoulder bag, I slipped a handful of milk candies and simple biscuits, along with a thermos. I'd kept the lunchbox separate to preserve its heat. Extra supplies I'd pull quietly from my storage later when it was time to eat, so I wouldn't have to haul everything out in plain sight. The bundles I planned to carry looked just right, not too heavy, nothing to draw unwanted attention. If anyone at the train station asked questions, I had my answer ready. I'd say I'd shipped most of my belongings ahead as cargo and would collect them once I reached the commune. Satisfied, I stepped out of my hidden sanctuary and moved quietly to the kitchen. I swept through swiftly but carefully, a sturdy iron wok, frying pans, solid bowls and cups, and the sharp kitchen knives they'd long taken for granted. One by one, they vanished into my storage space, back into the hands of their rightful owner. I slipped out of the house slowly and silently. The sky was still dim, the air crisp. My aunt and her family were worn out from searching all night, dead asleep and too exhausted to wake so early. I didn't bother taking anything from my old room. My remaining clothes were faded and worn out, left hanging in the cabinet where they'd always been. I'd already secured everything truly valuable, safe and sound inside my domain. I walked down the quiet lane with steady steps, leaving that house and all its greed and deceit far behind me. Ahead lay the train station, and then the open road north. With that thought settled, I set off at a leisurely pace toward the bus stop that would take me to the train station. I'd arrived early, just as the sun began to climb above the rooftops, and only a handful of people were scattered around waiting. I bought my ticket and stood apart, watching the quiet street wake up. Before long, the warmth of the sun spread over my shoulders, and more people began to arrive, hurrying and jostling to secure their own fares. When the bus pulled up, I found a seat near the window with just my shoulder bag and kept my eyes alert. I wanted to memorize every detail of this place, older, simpler, yet still carrying its own quiet charm. I watched the rows of brick houses, leafy avenues, and passing cyclists glide by, savoring the view. After an hour's ride, we reached the terminal. I asked a passerby for directions to the train station and headed straight that way. But first, I ducked into a quiet corner to retrieve my 2 travel bags from storage, slinging them easily over my arms. Looking the part of a proper young traveler, I walked into the station square and joined the crowd waiting to board. The air here was thick with emotion. Everywhere I looked, young people stood clutching their bundles, surrounded by weeping parents and relatives. Cries and soft wails echoed across the platform, goodbyes that felt like they might be forever. I'd only ever read about this in history books back in my modern life, the sorrow and fear hanging over the sent-down youth, leaving their familiar homes to face unknown labor and hardship in the countryside. Now I was part of that scene, living it firsthand. But I didn't feel sad or bitter. I stood calmly amidst the tears and noise, grateful for my own path. Hard work in the north was nothing compared to the fate I'd narrowly escaped, being sold off as a ghost bride to satisfy someone's greed. Whatever lay ahead, it was far better than what I'd left behind. All of us youths bound for the far north, Heilongjiang province, boarded the train one by one. I found my seat number easily, and to my delight, it was right by the window again. I've always loved gazing out at the passing scenery during travel. It keeps my mind at ease and never feels tedious. I stowed my 2 cloth bags neatly on the overhead rack, settled into my seat, and prepared for a quiet journey. But my hope for peace was short-lived. Hardly had the train lurched forward when chaos broke out just 2 rows ahead. A girl, probably no older than 16 or 17, was arguing loudly with a woman sitting nearby. She wanted to swap seats to be next to her friend, and when the woman refused, the girl burst into tears, wailing that she was being bullied and mistreated. The commotion drew eyes from all around. Some tried to mediate, others just whispered and gossiped. I turned my gaze firmly out the glass, refusing to get drawn in. My thoughts drifted back to the house I'd left behind. By this hour, my aunt must have woken up. She'd step into the kitchen and realize every pot, pan, and useful utensil had vanished, as well as her cash and coupons too. I couldn't help but smirk inwardly, let her stew in that panic and helplessness. She looked truly pathetic in my mind, and I felt not an ounce of pity. The journey stretched on. I knew from the documents I'd been given that it would take 3 full days and nights of travel to cross the vast distance from Shanghai all the way north to Heilongjiang. Our destination was clearly marked: Hongqi Production Brigade, Xinhua State Farm, located near the foothills of the Greater Xing'an Mountains, a place known for its wide open spaces and strict but organized management. As noon approached on the first day, the carriage filled with the smell of food. Some youths pulled out plain steamed buns and pickled vegetables, others shared meager rations with friends, while a few sat quietly with nothing to eat at all. Tensions simmered close to the surface. I heard raised voices not far away. One boy accused another of stealing his ration of dry cakes. A group of city girls complained bitterly about the hard seats and lack of clean water, sobbing that they'd never survive the countryside. Arguments flared over trivial things. Who took up more space, whose bag was in the way, who got to open the window. I kept to myself, making no sound. I didn't touch the warm pork buns and dumplings I'd packed in my lunchbox, too risky to show such fine food openly. Instead, I casually reached into my shoulder bag, pulled out a few plain milk biscuits, and washed them down with cool water from my bottle. Simple, quiet, and unremarkable. I stayed small and invisible, eyes drifting back to the window as the scenery slowly shifted from bustling city streets to endless green plains, and finally to darker, denser forests hinting at the wild north waiting ahead. After finishing my biscuits and water, I leaned my head back against the hard seat, closed my eyes, and let the rhythmic rumble of the train lull me into a doze. I slept soundly, not stirring until deep night had fallen. Most of the carriage was quiet now. Some youths were curled up awkwardly on seats or the floor, fast asleep, while a few others were still hunched over, slowly eating their meager, precious dinners, careful not to waste a crumb or draw unwanted attention. The girl sitting beside me noticed I'd opened my eyes. Her reaction was instant. She snatched the cloth-wrapped bundle in her lap and pressed it tight against her chest, her eyes darting away nervously. She'd only seen me eating plain biscuits and water earlier, so she'd assumed I was short on supplies and might try to ask for her pork buns. I almost laughed out loud at her exaggerated caution, but I kept my face blank. I stood up slowly and made my way toward the restroom at the end of the swaying carriage. Once inside, I slid the lock shut, and in the blink of an eye, I was safe inside my bright, spacious storage room. I didn't waste a moment, grabbed a plate of hot, juicy dumplings and one soft pork bun, eating quickly and greedily before washing it all down with a refreshing drink. No pickles, no dry bread, no fear of running out. Just warm, satisfying food that filled me with energy. When I'd had my fill, I smoothed my clothes and stepped quietly back out, returning to my seat. I deliberately took another plain biscuit from my bag, unwrapped it, and nibbled away calmly. The girl beside me watched from the corner of her eye, her expression shifting from fear to a smug, almost arrogant look that I found utterly distasteful, clearly delighted that she'd protected her treasures, and I was stuck with nothing better to eat. I didn't let it bother me in the slightest. I just bit into my biscuit contentedly, turned my face toward the dark window, and let a faint, secret smile touch my lips as I watched the shadowy northern landscape roll past under the moonlight. Let her think what she wanted. I knew exactly how lucky I truly was. I woke up the next morning to the sound of loud, spirited singing echoing through the carriage. A group of youths had gathered near the front, their voices ringing out with revolutionary songs about embracing the countryside and building a new life. The initial awkwardness and tension of the first day had largely faded. Most everyone had struck up conversations, sharing stories about their homes and families, laughing or swapping whatever snacks they had. I remained quietly in my sit. Across from me sat two teenage boys, both around 18 years old. They stood out immediately fresh-faced, with neatly combed hair and clean, sturdy clothes that fit perfectly, no patches or frayed edges like so many others wore. One was tall and broad-shouldered, with thick dark eyebrows and an open, earnest face. The other was slimmer, with sharp eyes and a quiet elegance about him. Their hands were smooth and uncalloused, their demeanor calm and assured. Clearly they came from families of means, not ordinary working-class backgrounds. To my left was the girl from last night, the one who'd been so terrified I'd beg for her food. She too looked far from common, Her coat was made of fine thick cotton, her braids tidy and tied with bright ribbons, and her skin was pale and soft, untouched by hard labor. She kept her bundle pressed close, her eyes darting occasionally to me with a mixture of wariness and faint pride. We four formed a little island of silence amidst the noise and bustle. No one spoke much. We just sat there, each wrapped in our own thoughts. I guessed people would probably call us the Quiet Four before long. It suited me perfectly fine. I had no desire to force connections or waste energy on small talk. Appearances could be deceiving, after all. They might look privileged and put together now, but I knew I held the greatest advantage of all. Safety, plenty, and a secret they could never imagine. I leaned back comfortably, letting the songs and chatter wash over me, content to remain unnoticed and at peace. I stood up and made my way toward the restroom, my secret destination. Once the door was locked tight behind me, I slipped effortlessly into my storage space. I headed straight to the gleaming bathroom to wash my face and brush my teeth. Then I treated myself to 2 soft pork buns and a small carton of creamy milk. "I'm truly alive," I whispered with a quiet chuckle, savoring every bite. It felt like a luxury I'd earned 100 times over. Afterward, I stepped out and even stopped by the dining car to ask the staff what was on the menu for lunch. Dumplings, stir-fried greens, steamed rice, and clear vegetable soup, the attendant told me. I thanked him and returned to my seat with a plan. Today at lunch, I decided I'll bring out my lunchbox and eat my own dumplings and pork buns. I'll just buy some vegetables and soup to go with them. It wasn't about showing off. I simply refused to be looked down on without a fight. Let them underestimate me first, let them reveal their own attitudes, then I'd quietly show them I wasn't someone to trifle with. That was the way to play it. Back in my seat, I turned my gaze to the window again. Old habits really did die hard. And the view never disappointed. Vast rolling mountains stretched toward the horizon, endless fields of green and gold swept past, and the air looked crisp and clear under a bright blue sky. I drank in the beauty of the north, feeling completely at peace. When lunchtime finally arrived, I didn't rush. I stayed seated, eyes fixed on the scenery. Around me, most of the youths pulled out their own rations, coarse cornbread, plain steamed buns, simple biscuits, while others lined up to buy hot meals in the dining car. After a few minutes, I stood up too. I emptied my thermos so I could fill it with soup, retrieved my sturdy lunchbox from my storage, and joined the queue. When it was my turn, the server glanced at my lunchbox, already clearly full, and looked briefly surprised, but he didn't question it. He served me a generous portion of stir-fried greens and filled my thermos with hot soup. I paid quickly and returned to my seat. Then I saw the girl beside me eating soft white buns. As soon as I sat down, she instinctively pulled her food closer to her chest, eyes wary. I thought, who would ever want your simple buns when I have so much better? Across the aisle, the 2 boys had also bought meals from the dining car and were eating quietly and politely. Now it was my turn. I unclasped my lunchbox and opened it slowly. I started with the tender dumplings, then ate the crisp greens, sipping warm soup from my thermos between bites. Finally, I took a large, deliberate bite of my fluffy pork bun, right where the girl beside me couldn't miss it. I kept my face turned toward the window, appearing perfectly calm and unbothered, but I caught her reaction in my peripheral vision. Her eyes went wide, her mouth frozen mid-chew, staring at my food in disbelief and envy. After lunch, I settled back into my seat, eyes fixed on the passing landscape, letting the gentle sway of the train help me rest. The girl beside me stood up abruptly and hurried off toward the other end of the carriage, probably to avoid the awkwardness or find someone to complain to. I didn't mind the quiet company of the empty seat. I waited a full hour to avoid drawing suspicion, then made my way to the restroom. Once safely locked inside, I slipped into my storage space again. I quickly washed my lunchbox and thermos spotless in the private bathroom, then refilled the flask with cool, room-temperature water. Feeling like treating myself, I twisted open a jar of preserved peaches, sweet, golden slices glistening in syrup, and ate 4 slices slowly, savoring every drop, then washed it all down with fresh water. This is exactly how it should be, I thought with deep satisfaction. Simple, safe, and perfect. Before stepping out, I made sure to flush the toilet and run the tap for a moment, just to sound natural in case anyone was listening. When I opened the door, someone was indeed waiting right outside. He was tall, with a strong, chiseled jawline and sharp, bright eyes that seemed to take everything in at a glance. Even in plain, simple clothes, his build was solid and disciplined, broad shoulders, straight posture. It reminded me instantly of the military. His hair was cropped short and neat in that unmistakable, no-nonsense style I'd seen only on servicemen. There was no doubt he'd look even more striking in uniform or a well-tailored suit, but he commanded attention just as he was handsome, composed, radiating a quiet strength. I didn't linger or stare. I met his gaze for only a split second, then stepped past him with a polite nod, keeping my expression calm and neutral. I walked steadily back to my window seat, ignoring the faint feeling of curiosity niggling at the back of my mind. The next 2 days fell into a comfortable rhythm: doze against the window, observe the passing scenery, excuse myself to the restroom to refresh and eat properly in my private sanctuary, then return to sit quietly. I made a point of buying simple meals from the dining car every day too, never too fancy, just enough to seem normal. By the final day of our journey, the kitchen had even prepared something special: tender braised pork alongside steamed cabbage and rice. I bought a portion and returned to my seat. The girl beside me watched every bite I took, her eyes glued to my bowl. The look of shock, envy, and confusion on her face was truly priceless. I paid her no mind and focused on my food until I caught a low, sneering murmur from her side. "Who knows what you had to do to get such good food?" she muttered loud enough for me to hear, her tone sharp with malice. "You barely had biscuits and water at first. People don't just get better things out of nowhere. Probably did something improper to earn it." My blood ran cold with anger. How dare she? I set down my chopsticks slowly and turned to face her fully, my gaze cool and hard. "Not everyone is like you, assuming the worst of others just because your own mind is small," I said clearly, my voice steady but sharp enough to carry. She flushed bright red, taken aback. I turned my attention back to my meal, eating slowly and with obvious enjoyment, deliberately letting her see every savory bite of the rich pork and fresh vegetables. I sat facing her directly, no longer hiding or shrinking away. Let her watch, let her wonder, let her burn with her own baseless suspicions. A few nearby youths had overheard the exchange and seen her face crumple. A low ripple of chuckles spread through the rows. Some quickly covered their mouths to stifle laughter, while others looked at the girl with faint disapproval. She shrank back in her seat humiliated, and didn't dare say another word for the rest of the trip. I finished my lunch in peace, the warm flavors lingering as I turned back to the view, satisfied that I'd put her in her place. After 3 long days and nights, the train finally slowed to a halt, the whistle echoing sharply across the vast, open landscape. We'd arrived. I didn't scramble to my feet like the others, who were already shoving and crowding toward the exits, eager yet anxious to step onto solid ground. The weather here in the north felt crisp and invigorating. The sun shone bright and clear, but a biting, cool wind swept through, carrying the faint scent of pine and earth from the nearby mountains. It was just as I'd imagined: fresh, raw, and unforgivingly beautiful. I waited until the carriage had mostly emptied before standing up to retrieve my bags from the overhead rack. Just as I stretched my arm upward, a hand reached past me, grasped my bundles easily, and lowered them gently into my reach. I looked up to see the tall, sharp-jawed man I'd encountered by the restroom door. His expression was still calm and composed, his eyes steady. I offered a grateful smile. "Thank you so much." He gave a brief, silent nod, no more than a quick tilt of his head, then turned and strode toward the exit without a backward glance. I followed a few steps behind him, clutching my bags close. The station platform was a chaotic sea of young faces and luggage, bundles tied with rope, cloth sacks, wooden boxes, and trunks piled high. Some struggled under heavy loads, shoulders hunched against the wind. Others, like me, traveled light. Banners and wooden signs bobbed above the crowd, marked with the names of farms, communes, and production brigades in bold characters. I scanned them quickly until I spotted mine, Hongqi Production Brigade. I walked over to the group gathered beneath it and greeted the team leader politely. "Leader, my name is Yang Yue." He flipped through a stack of papers on his clipboard, nodded, and said, "Report in and wait. We're rounding up everyone assigned here." There were only 25 youths bound for our commune in total. At the moment, just 5 of us stood waiting quietly, keeping to ourselves against the wind. 20 minutes passed before the rest straggled over. Most were familiar faces from my train carriage, including the 2 quiet boys who'd sat across from me and the girl who'd caused such a scene earlier. She kept her head down and stayed far from me this time. Once our group was fully accounted for, we were led to a weathered green bus parked nearby. The engine rumbled loudly as we climbed aboard, the seats hard and worn but a welcome relief after days on the train. As we bumped along the rough dirt roads, leaving the station and town behind, I watched forests and rolling fields stretch out endlessly toward the greater Shingon Mountains. The scenery was wild and magnificent, and I felt a quiet surge of resolve. This was my new beginning, far from the greed and deceit I'd left behind. The ride was long, bumpy, and thoroughly unpleasant. Roads turned from paved highway to rutted dirt, jolting us endlessly, and we finally pulled into the commune headquarters. We were lined up in rows, tired and dusty, while the leaders stepped forward to announce the assignments. Our group of 25 would be split 3 ways. First group, bound for the Hongguang State Production Brigade, deeper into the mountains. Second group, sent to Daxing Village Farm, out in the more remote countryside. Third group, assigned to Xinhua State Farm, my destination. We moved to stand with our respective groups. I scanned the crowd and felt a quiet sense of relief. The girl who'd slandered me on the train was nowhere near me. She'd been assigned to the village farm instead. Good riddance. I knew exactly what that meant. Village farms were generally the harder choice. Supplies were scarcer, conditions rougher, and the work was tallied in work points rather than steady pay. In the harsh northern climate, young city folk struggled doubly so. Everything was unfamiliar, and gossip traveled faster than the wind. Everyone knew everyone's business. There was nowhere to disappear to, nowhere to breathe freely. State farms like Xinhua, by contrast, were run more like military settlements. We'd be organized and disciplined, treated almost like new recruits. Strict about schedules and duties, but fair. We earned cash wages, not just work points, which meant real income and independence. We'd also get annual leave, so I could travel or trade freely when the season turned. The grounds were vast and spread out, plenty of space to keep to myself, less chance of prying eyes. That was exactly why I'd chosen it. Or rather, why the original Yue had chosen it. I remembered now. She'd asked her teacher for advice before registering, and he'd strongly recommended a state farm over a village for exactly these reasons. She'd followed his counsel, and now I was reaping the wisdom of it. As for the Hongguang State Production Brigade, the first group, they were a tougher, more militarized unit. They'd be building and clearing land, working alongside veterans and soldiers. It was harder labor, more regimented, and even more isolated. But they had their own supply lines and infrastructure, so they'd never go hungry. Different hardships, different trade-offs. I stood tall in the third group, clutching my bags and breathing the crisp northern air. I'd made it. Now all I had to do was survive and thrive on my own terms. Our leader was an elderly man with a straight back and a firm, commanding voice that carried across the yard, every word spoken with the weight of someone accustomed to being obeyed. It was clear he was a retired soldier, his manner sharp and authoritative. "Load your belongings onto the back of the tractor," he instructed, his tone leaving no room for argument. "You have 30 minutes to buy anything you're missing. And we have our own shops in Xinhua, so we only come to the commune headquarters once every 2 weeks, so make the most of this time." I walked over first and neatly arranged my bags on the tractor's flatbed. The others followed, placing their things carefully alongside mine. Glancing around, I felt quietly relieved. Our group seemed decent enough, no one causing trouble or pushing others around. With my load secured, I hurried straight to the state-run supply shop. I went through my mental checklist. First, a thick woven bamboo mat to lay over the hard wooden bed frame, which was standard in every dormitory. Then, bamboo baskets in both large and small sizes, essential for carrying everything, and a wide-brimmed bamboo hat to shield my face and neck from the sun. I also grabbed an extra insulated thermos, a set of sturdy wooden chopsticks, and a few cloth pouches to keep small items organized. With my purchases secured, we set out for Chinois State Farm. The tractor rumbled steadily along the packed dirt road, and the scenery exceeded every hope I'd held, vast fields stretching toward the horizon, backed by the dark, rolling silhouette of the greater Shingon Mountains. The crisp, pine-scented air felt clean and alive. Barely 30 minutes later, we slowed to a halt. Several solid mud brick houses with thick thatched roofs stood closest to the entrance, while further back rose newer, sturdier buildings of red brick with gray tile roofs, neat, permanent, and built to last. Our leader turned to face us, his posture straight and authoritative. "I am Captain Zhao, head of Chinois State Farm," he announced clearly. "Let me explain how things work here. This is a state-run farm, not a village commune. All land, buildings, and tools belong to the nation. Everyone here, sent-down youths, retired soldiers, permanent workers, technicians, and their families, works for the farm. We do not use work points. Every one of you receives a fixed monthly salary in cash based on your rank and work. You are state employees, entitled to rations, scheduled rest days, and annual leave. That is how we operate." He moved on to housing. "Boys and girls will live in separate dormitories. There are currently 30 young women and 40 young men who arrived in previous years. They have already moved into the newly built red brick dormitory barracks, clean, warm, and nearly finished. You will join them and share rooms until further arrangements are made." I took a breath and raised my hand. "Captain Zhao, would there happen to be a small, separate red brick house with its own kang and stove? I would be willing to rent it." He paused, studying me. "There is one such house," he said slowly. "It stands a short distance away, somewhat isolated. If you take it, you must fetch your own water, tend your own fire, and prepare your own meals, no dormitory privileges. We will draw up the paperwork tomorrow. For tonight, stay with the others." Just then, a stream of youths in work clothes walked up from the fields, the older ones returning at day's end. Captain Zhao gestured to two stepping forward. "These are your team leaders. They will guide you from here." With that, he turned and left. The man stepped forward first. "I am Li Wei, boys' team leader. I arrived here in the autumn of 1968. He turned to the woman beside him. "This is Wang Hong, girls' team leader. She came in the spring of 1969. Team leader Li continued. "Since you have not yet begun work, there will be no salary advance this month. But tomorrow morning, you will each receive your standard monthly grain and food rations from the farm storehouse, at state expense. Rest, organize your things, and settle in. Tomorrow afternoon, we begin work. For tonight, you are our guests. A welcome meal is prepared. Follow us." As for me, I would sleep in the dormitory only this one night, then move to my own place tomorrow. It seemed only right to bring a small offering. I reached into my storage and retrieved 2 tins of luncheon meat and placed them in my quilt bag. Here's what I forgot to tell. All my supplies from the future had adjusted themselves. No modern dates, no foreign labels, just honest names and standard packaging. I followed the girls into the red brick dormitory. Team leader Wang assigned us to a room shared with 3 older girls. "I should mention," she said gently, "these red brick quarters were originally meant for permanent staff families. We've had to squeeze everyone in temporarily while additional housing is built. Consider it a privilege for now, compensation for the delay. Be polite and respectful when you pass the family quarters, especially toward the retired soldiers and their families. This is an orderly place. Trouble is rare, and we intend to keep it that way. I nodded. She showed me a spot on the heated Kong bed I would share with another newcomer, a quiet girl named Xiaolan. I laid out my newly bought bamboo mat, thin blanket and pillow, then reached into my quilt bag and quietly took out the 2 luncheon meat. I found Team Leader Wang outside the room and held them out to her. Team Leader Wang, I said softly, I know I'll be living separately starting tomorrow, so I wanted to offer this as a small peace offering, something to share with everyone tonight. It's from my family supplies back in Shanghai. I hope it helps make up for not staying with the group. She looked at the 2 tins, clearly surprised. Melon luncheon meat? That's not easy to come by. She studied me, then smiled warmly. That is very thoughtful of you. Thank you. I'll see it shared fairly with everyone. Welcome to Xinhua Yue. I bowed slightly and returned to my room, feeling lighter. A small gesture, but it smoothed the way. Tomorrow I'd have my own house, my own space, and all my secrets safe within reach. But tonight here, among them, I would be just another girl starting over. That evening, we gathered in the spacious, bright dining hall. Wooden tables had been set together in rows, steaming bowls placed at every seat. Before we ate, Team Leader Wang stood beside the table and smiled. Let us begin by getting to know one another. We have 8 new arrivals joining us today. Please introduce yourselves. We stood up one by one. I'm Xiaolan, 19, from Shanghai, said the quiet girl who'd been assigned to share the king with me. I'm Yue, also 19, from Shanghai, I said simply. Next came the 17-year-old girl. I'm Yingzi, from Beijing. Then the 18-year-old. I'm Jinjian, from Shanghai. Then the boys stood. I'm Jiangua, 19, from Beijing. I'm Chengwei, 18, from Shanghai. I'm Mingyuan, 19, from Shanghai. I'm Zhiyong, 18, from Beijing. After us, the older youths stood and introduced themselves one by one. There were about a dozen of them present. Some had just turned 20, others were 19 and 18, all friendly and welcoming. They'd been here longer, a bit tanned and sturdy from working the land. Then Team Leader Li spoke up. Before we eat, I want to say this. Some of our new comrades have generously shared food they brought from home, so we may all eat a little better tonight. This is the spirit we want here, sharing and helping one another. A quiet murmur of appreciation went around the room. We sat down to eat. The meal was far better than I'd expected. Every table had a large bowl of thick millet and sorghum porridge, dotted with thin slices of savory luncheon meat, giving it a rich, salty flavor. Beside it stood a plate of bright green stir-fried cabbage, a platter of steamed river fish, tender and fresh, and a small bowl of salted wild vegetables. Some had also brought dried shrimp, pickled soybeans, and pressed salted radish from home, which were passed around to share. It was a simple meal, but warm and abundant. As I ate, glancing around the room at faces new and old, I felt a quiet satisfaction. Tomorrow, I would have my own place, my own sanctuary, where I could truly begin. I woke up early the next morning, my body still stiff and restless. Without my own soft mattress, I'd tossed and turned through the night, barely sleeping soundly. The room was still wrapped in quiet darkness, everyone else fast asleep, so I slipped quietly out the door. I told myself I was heading to the outhouse, but really it was the perfect excuse to step unobserved into my storage space. There, I washed myself thoroughly with warm water, brushed my teeth, and smoothed my hair. Refreshed and clean, I stepped back out into the crisp morning air. The sun had just begun to peek over the treetops, spilling soft golden light across the fields and painting the sky in pale shades of pink and orange. The air smelled of pine and damp earth, sharp and clean. I walked toward the kitchen building, my breath puffing faintly in the cool air. Inside, an older girl was already stirring the stove fire. It was Chunhua, the same one who'd cooked yesterday. She looked up in surprise as I entered. "Good morning," I greeted. Chunhua smiled warmly, wiping her hands on her apron. "Good morning to you, Yue. Go back to rest, you only just arrived yesterday. There's no need to be up this early." "Thank you," I said gently, "but once I wake up, I simply can't fall back asleep. I might as well be useful. What are you planning to cook for everyone today?" Just plain sorghum porridge and stir-fried wild greens, she told me, gesturing to the piles of fresh vegetables waiting on the wooden table. Simple fare, but it will keep them going through the morning. Let me help, I offered immediately. I can wash and chop everything while you tend the fire. Chun-Hua nodded gratefully. That would be a great help. Thank you. I set to work quickly, rinsing the cabbage and tender wild greens in cold water, shaking them dry, then slicing them evenly so they'd cook fast and stay crisp. I chopped the wild garlic and scallions too, setting them aside to flavor the oil. Chun-Hua lit the fire under the big iron wok, poured in a splash of oil, and once it shimmered, I tossed in the greens. They hissed satisfyingly, turning bright green as we stirred them together. The porridge simmered slowly in the other pot, thick and fragrant, until the whole kitchen filled with warm, earthy steam. When it was ready, the meal looked humble but nourishing, steaming bowls of porridge, soft and filling, alongside a generous serving of greens still glistening with oil and lightly salted. Chun-Hua ladled a bowl for me first, but I only ate a few spoonfuls, enough to seem like I'd had my share. I knew I'd eat properly later, in the comfort and safety of my own house, with real food from my storage. No one paid me any mind. Most everyone was too hungry and tired to notice how little I took. I set my bowl aside and busied myself helping serve the others, my stomach quiet and contented, knowing exactly where my next warm meal would come from. After breakfast, Team Leader Lee gathered us and led the way to the storehouse to collect our monthly rations, coarse grain, a small portion of cooking oil, salt, and coal briquettes. I received my share, then quietly slipped them into the dormitory bedroom where I'd stayed overnight, setting them neatly beside my belongings. Once that was done, I went straight to Captain Zhao's office, eager to settle my housing arrangements before afternoon work began. The paperwork went smoothly. I paid a full year's rent in one go, something that drew a brief nod of approval from the captain, and the deed was done. He carried a bucket of water and lent me a broom and rags. Then he walked me out to see the place myself. It stood apart from the rest of the compound, a lone, tidy red brick house bathed in sunlight. It was built for another young comrade, Captain Zhao told me as we approached. But he only stayed 3 months before he was granted a transfer back to the capital. Now it's yours. It was perfect, just the right size for one person. A neat wooden fence, about 4 feet high, enclosed a small private courtyard. Stepping inside, we found one spacious main room with a wide heated kong built along the back wall. Adjoining it was a separate kitchen nook fitted with a solid brick cooking stove. A wooden door connected the kitchen directly to the main room, so warmth could pass through easily. The windows were set deep in the thick walls, framed in wood and covered with sturdy translucent paper, and above the stove rose a narrow brick chimney to carry smoke cleanly out. Anything else you need for daily life, Captain Zhao instructed, you may buy at the farm supply shop: tools, cloth, household goods, and dry provisions. They stock everything except fresh meat and vegetables. Those are distributed only through the farm's official rations. He paused to add practical advice. As for washing and bathing, there is a public bathhouse that opens twice a week, clean and orderly. In summer, many also go down to the clear river nearby to wash and cool off. It's safe enough, just don't wander too far from the bank. With that, he left me to settle in. I had barely dipped a cloth in water and begun wiping down the kang when there came a soft knock at the door. It was Xiaolan. I came to help you clean, she said with a gentle smile. Working side by side made light work of it. We swept every corner, wiped the brick walls spotless, scrubbed the kang surface smooth, and cleared out the stove until everything felt fresh and ready. When we were done, we returned to the dormitory to fetch my things. I let Xiaolan carry the bag of clothes, heavy enough to feel proper, while I took charge of the woven baskets, my thick quilt bag, and the sack of rations. I kept my steps steady and my posture upright. Back at the house, we set everything in place, then walked together to the farm supply shop. I picked out a sturdy wooden table, 2 matching chairs, and a solid chest of drawers to store my clothes. I also bought a pair of sharp scissors, then asked the shop assistant, whether they have sewing needles and spools of cotton thread for mending clothes. He nodded and fetched a small paper packet of needles and a few rolls of strong thread in black, white, and gray. Xiaolan only bought a smaller dresser for herself, nothing more. After we paid, the shop workers kindly offered to carry my larger items and deliver them right to my door. I only needed to carry the 2 chairs myself, walking slowly and comfortably, and waved warmly to Xiaolan as she turned back toward the dormitory. At last, I had my own little home, safe, private, and truly mine. Once all the furniture was carried inside and set in place, I began arranging everything carefully. The red brick Kong dried fast. I laid down the woven bamboo mat first, then pulled my soft, thick mattress straight from my storage space, spreading it evenly. Over it went a crisp cotton sheet, and finally my pillow. My bed was as comfortable as any I'd ever known. Then I stepped into my storage space again, bringing along the spare bedding and thin blanket I'd used last night. I tossed them into my washer-dryer combo machine, set it running, and let it hum quietly away. I stepped back out to wipe down the wooden dresser until it shone, then polished the table and 2 chairs until no speck of dust remained. The floor was smooth, solid cement, clean and easy to keep tidy. I paused for a moment, curious about the young man who'd lived here before me. He'd stayed only 3 months before being transferred back to the capital. He must have had powerful connections or a very special background to get such a privilege. But I pushed the thought aside, dwelling on others wouldn't help me. I turned the lock on the door tight and slipped back into my private space. I washed my hands with warm running water and dried them, then treated myself to a can of sweet orange juice. Next came 3 fluffy pork buns, endlessly replenishing, just like everything else here. And a box of delicate Chinese pastries I'd almost forgotten I had. I'd only managed to nibble at the cream eclairs during the long train ride, but now I could savor them all. Just as my pork buns never ran out, so too these sweet treats, the eclairs, and even the rich chocolate cake were unlimited, always fresh, always ready. For the first time in a long while, I felt truly free, able to come and go, eat and rest, exactly as I pleased. When I'd had my fill, I took the freshly washed, perfectly dry bedding and blanket out of the machine, folded them neatly, and set them on the counter. I took only my thin blanket with me as I stepped back out, laying it over my bed, then began sorting through the clothes I'd brought. I'd decided, when I needed an excuse to go to the commune to collect a package, that would be the perfect time to bring out my extra belongings, my iron wok, frying pans, and cooking pots. For now, I'd keep things simple. Only the kettle stood on the stove for anyone to see. Suddenly I remembered, I still needed a proper wok for cooking. I hurried out the door, locking it securely behind me, and ran straight to the supply shop before afternoon work began. I was in luck. They had sturdy iron woks and spatula. I also bought 2 wooden water buckets with a shoulder pole, essential for drawing water from the well or river, so I'd look no different from anyone else. I paid with cash and coupons, carried my purchases back home, and set the wok and buckets neatly in the kitchen corner. I changed into durable work clothes, filled my insulated thermos with cool water from my storage, tied my wide-brimmed bamboo sun hat firmly on my head, and slipped on a pair of thick canvas work gloves. Ready from head to toe. I stepped outside, locked the door once more, let out a long, steady breath to calm my heart, and set off toward the assembly ground where our work assignments would be given. When I reached the open assembly ground, only a handful of older youths had arrived ahead of time. They paused their quiet chatting to glance over, taking in my neatly tied bamboo sun hat, sturdy canvas gloves, and well-fitted work clothes. Instead of mocking or finding fault, they let out soft, approving chuckles and gave me a firm nod of respect. "Ready for the fields, aren't you?" one of them called out gently. I smiled back and stood quietly, hands resting easily at my sides. We waited patiently as more people trickled in, not just our group of sent-down youths, but also permanent farm workers and even family members of the staff who came to lend a hand during busy spells. Soon, the whole area was filled with people, tools resting on shoulders or set neatly at their feet. Captain Zhao stepped forward then, his voice loud and clear enough for everyone to hear. "Today we carry on with the field work at hand," he announced. "Some will tend to the irrigation ditches, clearing blockages and making sure water flows evenly to every crop row. Others will weed between the plants, carefully so as not to damage the young plants. Some teams will do pest control, hand-picking beetles and caterpillars, checking every leaf thoroughly. A few of us will also tend to the communal vegetable garden, keeping it watered and tidy so there are fresh greens for everyone's meals." He turned his gaze to us new arrivals. "For those who just joined us today, you will be paired with experienced comrades. Watch closely, learn the proper way to do things, follow instructions step by step, no rushing, no carelessness." I spotted Chunhua and Xiulan standing not far away. When their eyes fell on me, they looked clearly surprised. They'd never expected me to be so fully prepared from head to toe. Chunhua's face softened into a warm, approving smile. She nodded slowly, as if saying well done. Xiulan glanced down at her own outfit, a simple cotton t-shirt, sturdy dark work pants, and the same bamboo sun hat she'd bought at the shop. She smoothed her clothes self-consciously, then lifted her chin and adjusted her hat, seeming to resolve in her heart to work just as hard and keep up with everyone else. We all straightened up when Team Leader Lee called out the assignments. My heart was calm. My body was ready. Even if the work was tiring, I had strength and plenty hidden away to sustain me through it all. The assignments were called out clearly. All the girls will form the weeding teams, working alongside the experienced women comrades. The boys will head to the irrigation ditches, clearing, repairing, and guiding water flow to the fields. Next came the tools: light, handy small hoes and narrow-bladed hand shovels, perfect for working close to the plants without harming them. Then we were each paired with seasoned workers who knew these fields like the back of their hands. I fell into step beside a kind-faced woman in her 30s. "I'm Auntie Gue," she told me warmly. "I've been working on this farm for 4 years now. Don't be nervous, we'll take it slow." As we walked along the field path, she chatted gently. "I've seen so many new youths come out on their very first day. Some are stiff and awkward, some rush too fast, some get discouraged when their hands get dirty. But once you get used to it, the work teaches you its own rhythm." When we reached our assigned plot, I saw that the crops were thriving, planted back in spring. They had grown tall and strong, their broad leaves spreading wide, sturdy stalks already thickening as they began to form ears and fruit. This was no longer tender seedling stage. These were mature plants growing toward harvest time. Auntie Gue knelt down between the rows and showed me exactly how it was done. "See here," she said, demonstrating with slow, sure movements. "Slide the hoe just beneath the surface, only an inch or 2 deep, loosen the soil, and lift the weeds out by their roots. Don't hack wildly. Keep the blade angled away from the crop stalks, so you don't nick or loosen them by mistake. Leave the soil light and soft around the base of the plants. That helps them grow even better." I knelt beside her and tried my best to copy her motions. My first few attempts were clumsy. My angle was wrong, I dug too deep, and I pulled up more loose earth than weeds. But I didn't stop. I watched her again, adjusted my grip, slowed my breath, and tried again. Little by little, my movements smoothed out. I learned to feel the difference between the tough weed roots and the firm, steady base of the crops. Soon my hands moved with steady rhythm. Slice, lift, clear, pat the soil gently back in place. Auntie Gue watched me work and gave a pleased nod. "You pick things up fast, Yue. Most fumble for half a day before getting it right. You've got good hands and a patient eye." It was true, weeding wasn't truly hard labor, so long as you stayed focused and careful. The sun shone warm but not scorching, the air smelled of growing crops and fresh turned earth, and the soft rustle of leaves filled the quiet between us. I kept at it steadily, my rows neat and clean, every weed gone, every crop standing tall and safe. I didn't tire easily, and I only drank half of my water. I kept pace with Auntie Gue without slowing down. Time slipped by unnoticed, lost in the steady rhythm of the work. Then, from the main compound, the clear, ringing sound of the brass bell drifted across the fields, clang, 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 signaling the end of the afternoon shift. Everyone straightened up, wiped sweat from their brows, and rested their tools on their shoulders. Side by side, we walked back along the path together, chattering softly about the day's work, laughing at small mishaps, and breathing in the cool evening air that was beginning to settle over the vast, golden fields. The workday drew to a close, and for us new girls, it had gone far better than expected. Our hands were a little calloused, backs slightly stiff, but nothing unbearable. The boys, though, had a harder time of it. Hauling buckets, clearing muck, and digging ditches had left their palms blistered, shoulders aching, and legs dragging as they walked back, groaning softly to one another about sore muscles. I smiled in sympathy as we neared the compound, then bade them all good night and turned toward my own little red brick house. I grabbed my large woven basket, locked the door tight behind me, and set off for firewood. The sun was just dipping low, painting the sky in soft streaks of orange and purple, still light enough to see clearly. Since I lived at the edge of the farm, the lower slopes of the back mountain were close by, quiet and peaceful. I moved quickly, gathering dry fallen branches of every size, thick enough to burn slow and hot, thin twigs for kindling. After half an hour, I raked up armfuls of dry pine needles and crumpled dead leaves, perfect for starting a fire fast. Before I knew it, my basket was piled high, far heavier and fuller than I'd planned. Time slipped by, and the sky deepened to inky blue, then full dark. But I was prepared. I reached into my storage and pulled out a sturdy metal flashlight, its beam cutting bright and clear through the shadows. I walked carefully, scanning the underbrush as I went. Captain Zhao had warned us that small wild animals might wander down from the hills at dusk, so I kept my light steady and my steps sure until I reached my gate. Once inside, I latched the wooden gate firmly and locked the house door twice, then set my basket of firewood down beside the kitchen stove. Now for light. I stepped into my storage and fetched my oil lamp, already filled with kerosene and ready. I reached for a lighter and realized only food restocks endlessly in my space. Lighters and matches don't. But I'd been wise long ago. I'd stocked up on dozens of them in my past life, and they'd all come with me. I flicked the flame to life, lit the lamp wick, and placed it in the center of the table. Warm golden light spilled out, chasing every shadow away. I switched off the flashlight and set it aside. Next, I knelt to light the king, my first time doing it alone. At first, I was clumsy. The twigs kept slipping, the smoke puffed back into my face, and the fire wouldn't catch. But I persisted, adjusting the wood, adding a handful of pine needles, and blowing gently until the flames took hold, crackling softly. Slowly, I felt the brick beneath my knees grow warm, then radiate heat through the whole room, blissful, steady warmth. Leaving the fire to burn slow, I stepped into my storage space. First, I washed my hands thoroughly in the gleaming sink, then set about cleaning every utensil I owned. I scrubbed my enamel cups, chopsticks, kettle, the woks and pans I'd brought from my aunt's house, the new iron wok and spatula I'd bought that morning, my extra thermos, and bowls of every size. There was no cleaner, more convenient place than this private bathroom sink, no shared water, no rushing, no dirt. I dried every piece with a soft cloth and stacked them neatly at the storage counter, ready to be brought out whenever I needed them. Then it was time for my dinner, no rationed grain, no thin porridge. I set out 10 plump hot juicy dumplings for soft warm steamed pork buns, a slice of rich chocolate cake, and a cold bottle of sparkling water. I savored every bite, the savory meat filling, the sweet fluffy cake, the crisp bubbles dancing on my tongue. I smiled to myself. Cooking over the brick stove would come later, but soon enough I'd grill, fry, and stew pork, chicken, fish, and beef as often as I pleased. When I'd eaten my last bite, I stepped back out of storage. The calm was now glowing warm, turning the small house into a cozy haven. I sank into the wooden chair, letting my mind go completely blank, no plans, no worries, no thoughts of the past or future. Just quiet emptiness, peaceful and light, a little habit I'd always loved. After resting a while, I gathered my clean clothes and stepped back into my storage for a long, hot shower, steam curling around me, water hot and steady, washing away every speck of dust and ache from the fields. Refreshed and soft, I changed into fresh clothes, then tossed my dusty work clothes into the washing machine, pressed the button, and let it hum quietly away, doing the work. This was my life now, safe, independent, and full of hidden abundance. I walked back to the warm Kong and dried my hair with my towel, then combed it slowly until it fell smooth and glossy past my shoulders. Stepping back into my storage, I poured myself a glass of cool, clean water and drank it down, then brushed my teeth until my mouth felt fresh and clean. I paused before the large mirror, studying my reflection closely. Compared to the day I'd first arrived here, thin and worn down by stress, I had filled out nicely. My face was softer, my limbs firmer, with just the right amount of healthy meat on my bones. My hair was no longer dry and brittle, it was sleek and shiny, and my skin glowed fair and smooth, nourished by good food and plenty of rest. I wasn't strikingly beautiful like a famous movie star, but there was a warm, vibrant charm about me, a quiet, alluring grace that drew the eye. My figure was far from flat, too. I was generously curved in all the right places, soft and feminine in a way that felt confident and natural. Staring back, I could clearly see the resemblance to my mother, the original owner's mother. Same gentle eyes, same soft line of the jaw, same thin lips. It was like seeing her young self again, and a quiet warmth filled my heart. Satisfied, I took my clean, dry work clothes out of the machine, folded them neatly, and stepped out of my space to tuck them away in the dresser drawers, arranging them so I could reach them easily when needed. I went to the Kong, adjusted the fire to keep the heat steady through the night, then blew out the oil lamp, warm darkness wrapping gently around the little house. I slipped under my thick, soft quilt, resting my head on the plump pillow, and let the quiet warmth of the brick Kong lull me fast into a deep, peaceful sleep. I woke with the first pale light of dawn seeping through the paper-covered window. My body had already grown accustomed to rising early, as if an internal clock had settled into a steady rhythm. I'd slept deeply through the night, wrapped in the gentle warmth of the Kang, though a faint dull ache lingered in my lower back from yesterday's bending and kneeling in the fields. It was nothing unbearable, just the stiffness of muscles unaccustomed to such work, and I paid it no mind. I stood slowly, reaching my arms high overhead, then twisted gently side to side, bending forward and back to stretch my spine. I rolled my shoulders and flexed my hips, working out the tightness bit by bit until the ache softened into a manageable throb. Once I felt loose and limber enough, I slipped quietly into my storage space. There I splashed cold, crisp water over my face to wake myself fully, then brushed my teeth. From my neatly stocked shelves, I took a bottle of water, a small packet of instant coffee, and 5 plump pork buns, enough for a hearty, satisfying start. I stepped back out into the quiet room, careful to keep my movements soft. I longed for rich, slowly brewed coffee, the kind that filled a room with its deep, aromatic scent, but I quickly pushed the thought aside. Coffee was rare, almost unheard of here in these years, especially during such turbulent times. Drawing attention to anything so unusual would be foolish. Instant coffee dissolved quietly in water, leaving no lingering smell to raise questions. That was the safe choice. I walked over to the brick stove in the kitchen, stacked a few dry twigs and kindling beneath the iron kettle, and lit a small, steady fire. Soon the water bubbled and steamed, hissing softly as it reached a boil. I poured some into my cup, stirred in the coffee until it dissolved into a warm, dark drink, then sat at my wooden table to savor my breakfast. The savory pork buns were soft and hot, filling me with strength, and the warm coffee chased away the last traces of morning drowsiness. When I finished, I drank a little plain water to rinse the lingering taste away, then poured the remaining hot water into my insulated thermos to keep it warm for later. After one last quick visit to freshen up and wash the dishes, I changed into my sturdy work clothes, thick cotton, practical and well-fitted. I settled my wide-brimmed bamboo sun hat firmly on my head, slipped my canvas gloves onto my hands, and fastened the thermos securely at my waist. I checked the stove fire was fully extinguished, then stepped outside, pulling the door shut and locking it twice to be sure. The morning air was cool and sharp, carrying the scent of dew and pine. I took a deep breath, squared my shoulders, and set off toward the assembly ground, ready, rested, and steady for whatever the day's work would bring. The next 3 days passed in the same quiet, steady rhythm: fields, work, rest, home, nothing out of the ordinary. Until one afternoon, when Aunt Gue came over positively glowing with joy, her eyes sparkling, and kept pressing me to come to her house for dinner that evening. It turned out her nephew had come to visit. He's from Beijing, she told me, leaning in excitedly. Enlisted in the army, a fine, upright young man. His grandfather lives here too. My own father, a bit stubborn in his old age, and my husband and he, along with other veteran comrades, look after all the farm's livestock and horses. His mother is my younger sister and stayed in the capital, tending to her 2 little ones, and her husband serves in the military as well. She went on, her voice soft but eager. My nephew is quiet, a little reserved and cold at first glance. Must be the family nature and the discipline of being a soldier. But he's good, steady, and honest. Whenever he gets leave, he comes straight here to visit. Then she lowered her voice, grinning like a girl with a secret. I want you to meet him, Yue. I see what a sensible, hardworking, independent girl you are, living all alone, managing everything so neatly. I think you two would suit each other just fine. And would you believe it? In his last letter, he even said he'd like to meet the girl I've been writing about. I blinked, stunned. Hold on. I'd barely been here a little over a week. And already I was being sized up as a possible marriage match? Aunt Gue certainly moved fast. She'd been writing to her nephew about me this whole time, and I hadn't the faintest idea what kind of tales she'd spun about me. Before I could even open my mouth to protest or politely decline, she patted my arm and said, "Go on home. Wash up and rest a bit. I'll come fetch you later." Then she hurried off, leaving me standing there rooted to the spot, eyes wide with surprise. Aunt Gue already knew I lived on my own, cooking and cleaning and fetching everything for myself, and she thought well of it, so I knew she wouldn't find it strange. Slowly, my shock faded, and a quiet curiosity took its place. What kind of young man was he really? Why had he said he wanted to meet me? Well, there was no harm in a friendly dinner and getting to know someone new. I'd go and see for myself. I bent back to my weeding, working steadily until the evening bell rang out. I walked back with the others, said my goodbyes, and hurried straight to my little red brick house. Locking the door tight behind me, I slipped instantly into my private space, first a long, warm shower to wash away every bit of dust and sweat, until I felt fresh and light all over. Then I stood thinking, suddenly feeling a little self-conscious. I rummaged through my clothes, wanting to look neat and proper without being overly fancy. In the end, I picked out a green shirt and black trousers. Clean, modest, and pleasant to look at. As I dried my hair, I remembered, you never visit someone's home empty-handed. I took 2 tins of luncheon meat, perfect as a thank you gift for Aunt Gue's kindness and a fitting courtesy for the family. Since she hadn't seen what I'd brought when I first arrived, she'd never question where it came from. I slipped them into my sturdy canvas bag, then tied my half-dry hair back neatly into a smooth ponytail. Just as I finished, I heard a cheerful call from the gate. Yue, are you ready yet? She'd come so quickly, she really wouldn't give me a single chance to back out. I stepped out the door, and when Aunt Gue saw me clean, tidy, hair soft and neat, she beamed brighter than ever. Just as I knew. You look lovely, my dear. You'll never regret coming along tonight. She slipped her arm gently through mine, and together we walked toward her warm, welcoming home. As we walked, Aunt Gue couldn't hold back her excitement, chattering nonstop about her nephew's childhood. Oh, he was such a handful back then, she laughed. Running wild, climbing trees, getting into scrapes. His mother, my poor sister, had such a hard time raising him alone. But as he grew up, all that fire settled down, and he turned quiet and steady. Don't let his silence fool you, though. He's the most sensible, thoughtful boy you could ever meet. Grandfather dotes on him terribly, and no wonder. Tall, broad-shouldered, handsome as can be too, you'll see. I just chuckled softly, nodding along, letting her talk. There wasn't much I could say anyway. I was just listening and going with the flow. 10 minutes later, we arrived at her home, another solid red brick house with a neat fenced courtyard, one of the few well-built homes I'd seen around the farm. The moment we stepped inside, rich, savory scents drifted from the kitchen. I quickly held out my canvas bag to her. "Please take this," I said firmly. "If you refuse, I'll turn right around and head home." Aunt Gui laughed, shaking her head at my stubbornness, but accepting it. All right, thank you, Yue." She led me into the main room, bade me sit on a wooden chair, then carried the bag to set it aside in the kitchen. After that, she walked over to a side room and called out softly for someone to come out. While waiting, 2 small children trotted over and hovered shyly around me, Aunt Gui's son and daughter. "Hello, Sister Yue," they piped up politely. I smiled warmly at them, greeted them in return, and slipped a sweet milk candy into their hands. Just then, Aunt Gui came back, followed by a tall young man whose face I knew all too well. She gently shooed the children away and beamed at us. "Yue, this is Gu Yan." She gave us a little nudge. "You two get to know each other," and with that, she stepped back into the kitchen to leave us alone. I stared at him, stunned. Gu Yan. It was him, the same man I saw outside the restroom and who'd helped me with my luggage. The one with the sharp, clean military haircut, strong jawline, and bright, steady eyes. And he looked just as surprised as I was, his eyes widening slightly, as if he'd never imagined this either. Small world, isn't it? I let a soft, amused smile touch my lips and greeted him first. "It's nice to see you again, Comrade Guyen." He nodded quickly, recovering his composure, and greeted me back in a low, steady voice. "Nice to see you too, Comrade Yue." For a moment, we sat facing each other in awkward silence, both waiting for the other to start speaking. He cleared his throat and spoke first. "I truly never expected," he said, his gaze fixed on me, "that the girl my aunt kept writing about would be you." My ears perked up instantly, and I looked straight at him, curious. He took a quiet breath and went on, his voice sincere and unguarded. "Ever since that brief meeting on the train, I've even dreamed of you more than once." I froze, completely stunned by his boldness. How could he say something so personal so openly? But he didn't look away and continued honestly. "My aunt described your appearance. Every detail matched exactly the girl I'd seen and helped on the train. That's why I agreed to come meet you. I just had to know if it was really you. And now, I'm so glad I did." To say I wasn't moved by his words would make me a liar. Whether he was just being sweet or speaking from the heart, my heart felt light and giddy, leaping and fluttering in my chest like it was doing somersaults. In my past life, I'd never been in any romantic relationship, and this life had been no different, until now. This was the very first time anyone had ever said such earnest, warm things to me. You might think me hopelessly naive, and you'd be right. When it came to matters of love, I knew almost nothing. All my focus, all my careful plans, had always centered on securing supplies, staying safe, and living a quiet, peaceful life. I lifted my gaze and gave him a soft, genuine smile. The tension in his shoulders melted away the moment he saw it, and he let out a quiet breath of relief. "I truly hope," he said gently, his voice steady and sincere, "that we can take the time to get to know each other better, truly understand one another." "I hope you feel the same way." I nodded without hesitation. "I would like that very much too." Just then, the wooden door creaked open. In walked white-haired but sturdy Grandfather Wang, followed by Uncle Chin, Aunt Gui's kind-faced husband. The 2 children trotted along close behind them, clinging to their sleeves and chattering happily. And there was Aunt Gui, stepping out from the side room where she'd clearly been listening in secret. her face beaming with delight, as if she'd pulled off the most wonderful plan. "All right, everyone," she called cheerfully. "Go wash your hands well. Dinner's ready, let's eat together." Grandfather Wang's eyes lit up the second he spotted Guyen. He walked over and patted his grandson's arm fondly. Then his gaze shifted to me, glancing back and forth between us with a twinkle in his eyes. He could easily guess what had just been happening between the two of us. At the dinner table, Aunt Gui had already arranged the seats, naturally placing Guyen right beside me. It felt a little bold, but no one so much as blinked an eye. Throughout the meal, he was thoughtful and gentle. He'd glance over quietly, ask which dish I preferred, and without waiting for a long reply, he'd place the best portions straight into my bowl: tender slices of braised pork, sweet soft chunks of pumpkin, fresh crisp greens. I didn't hold back. I ate heartily, filling my bowl again and again, and my healthy appetite drew warm chuckles from the whole family. They all already knew plenty about me. Aunt Gui had clearly shared all her impressions: how steady and hardworking I was, how I managed my own little home alone, how sensible and quiet I was. She'd even spoken openly of how well-suited she thought Guyen and I were, two calm, reliable souls who would make a fine pair. Her own older children had long since married and started families of their own, so she poured all her joy and hope into seeing her nephew settled happily. I just smiled and went along with their warm chatter, adding a few polite words here and there when spoken to, never too loud or too forward. They also already knew the little coincidence of our first meeting on the train. Guyen himself had told them, I realized. He explained a little more as we ate. He was officially stationed with the military right here in Heilongjiang, guarding this northern borderland. That trip on the train had been when he'd taken leave to visit family in Beijing, and he'd been heading back to his post when our paths crossed. It was a long journey, he said in his low, steady voice, glancing at me from time to time, but I didn't mind it at all, not after that short moment of helping lift her luggage. Aunt Gui beamed so brightly her eyes crinkled shut, and Grandpa Wang nodded slowly, tapping the table gently with a smile. Fate brings people together in the strangest ways, the old man said softly. What a happy coincidence indeed. The food was rich and savory, the company warm and kind, and for the first time since I'd left my old life behind. After dinner, the others cleared the table and left us to sit quietly side by side on the wooden bench in the warm lamplight. We talked freely, and I learned more about him. He was only 22, had enlisted in the army right after graduating high school, choosing duty over comfort. Back home in Beijing, he had two younger siblings, a brother 13 and a sister 8, whom he loved dearly. I, too, opened up a little, letting my guard down. I've been an orphan for a long time, I told him softly. My aunt took care of me, but life with her family was never kind or warm. I never spoke of the worst of it, just said I'd come far away to escape a terrible fate, being forced into marriage as a ghost bride, bound to a dead man against my will. At those words, his expression hardened instantly, sharp with anger at such cruelty, then softening into deep pity. You did the bravest thing possible by running away, he said firmly. And think, if you hadn't fled, we never would have crossed paths. Maybe in some strange twist, you would have lingered like a gentle ghost in my thoughts even before we ever met. I laughed lightly, the sound bright and carefree. Then I really am lucky to have escaped, aren't I? When it grew late, he insisted on walking me home. He led the way, holding a flashlight whose steady beam cut clean through the dark, lighting every uneven step and stray stone so I wouldn't stumble. The night air was crisp and cool, but I felt no chill with him beside me. When we reached my little red brick house, I paused at the gate. Thank you, Comrade Gu, I said, my voice warm. I'd invite you inside, but it's far too late, and we both need rest for work tomorrow. Good night. He stood there in the soft glow of the light, looking at me with a tenderness that made my heart flutter all over again. I know I'll sleep soundly tonight, he said, a faint, playful smile tugging at his lips. Now that I've finally met the one who's been haunting my dreams, haunting them in the sweetest, best way possible. He winked gently at me, then nodded toward the door. Go on inside safely. I smiled back, turned, and hurried inside. The moment the door clicked shut behind me, I pressed a hand over my mouth and let out a tiny, happy squeal I couldn't hold back. Outside, Guyen stood a moment longer, grinning to himself, before turning to walk back, his heart light too. That night was the sweetest, most peaceful sleep I'd ever known. No dreams of worry or fear, no tossing and turning, not even a trace of that familiar ache in my lower back. I rested fully, warm and content in the quiet dark. And when dawn broke, I woke naturally, refreshed and ready, eager to start a new day. That morning, as we knelt side by side tending the weeds, Aunt Gui leaned close, her voice dropping to a warm, excited whisper. Yue, listen, Guyen told me before he left early this morning. He wants me to prepare your lunch every day, and dinner too whenever I can. He even left extra money and grain coupons set aside just for your share, so you won't cost me a thing. I blinked hard, staring at her in utter disbelief, my mind reeling. Aunt Gui went on, beaming with pride. He told us he's found the one he wants, and he's fully determined to marry you. Right before heading back to his post, he even went ahead and submitted a formal application for marriage approval to his unit. They'll run a proper background check on you, and once everything clears, you two will be able to get married properly. Everything felt like a blur, spinning faster and faster. I quickly held up a hand, flustered. Wait, hold on a minute, Aunt Gui. How can Comrade Gu move this fast? We only properly met yesterday. It's barely been a few hours. How can he be applying for marriage already? Aunt Gui laughed heartily and patted my shoulder reassuringly. Oh, that's just how he is. Once he sets his heart on something or someone, he doesn't hesitate, doesn't drag his feet, no one can hold him back. Even my father didn't say a single word against it. He just nodded and smiled, saying he'd never seen his grandson so sure of himself before. And don't you worry about his mother either. She's not harsh or demanding at all. She'll probably spoil you even more than she spoils him. Just you wait and see. I took a long, steady breath to calm my racing heart. I didn't know what to make of all this. Was it sweet or just overwhelmingly fast? But I shook my head gently. Aunt Gui, thank you so much, truly, but eating both lunch and dinner at your place every single day is far too much trouble for you and your family. I can't let you go to that extra work for me. Aunt Gui chuckled, seeing my embarrassment, but not ready to give up. All right, how about we compromise? Eat with us once a day then? Come for lunch today and dinner tomorrow, just like that? I paused and thought carefully. If I kept arguing, she'd keep pushing, and I'd end up eating at her table every day, making me the center of attention, which I really didn't want. Plus, I didn't want to rely on others too much. So I offered my own fair, reasonable terms. Then how about just twice a week for lunch? That sounds manageable, doesn't it? I said softly. Even though we're not in a tiny village where gossip spreads like wildfire, word still travels fast around the farm. By this afternoon or tomorrow, all the other sent-down youths and workers would surely notice me going to your house every day, and I'd be so embarrassed by all the whispers and stares. I'd much rather keep a low profile, don't you think? Aunt Gui looked at me, seeing my good sense and quiet wish for privacy. She nodded slowly, a knowing smile on her face. Then I settled it. I would join them for meals every Wednesday and Saturday. Aunt Gui agreed at once, adding warmly that I could change my mind anytime and let her know. She laughed, pleased with herself. I'm so glad I brought you and Guyen together. I really do have a knack for matching people. Maybe I ought to take this up as a proper job. I chuckled along with her. She might be joking, but there was truth in it. She really did seem to have a good eye for pairing people who suited each other well. Before heading off to start cooking lunch, she reminded me again, when the work bell rings, come straight over, all right? Don't worry about what others say. Everyone here knows how I am, so no one will gossip or stare. I waved and nodded, smiling as I bent back to my work. As I pulled weeds steadily, I thought to myself, who would have guessed I'd end up with a marriage arranged like this, almost before I knew what was happening? But what a world of difference it made. This time, The person was alive, kind, sincere, and we'd already found a quiet understanding between us, even if we'd only just met. It was nothing like the fate I'd fled, being forced into a ghost marriage, bound to a dead man. Those poor girls had no choice. Wed to a spirit tablet or a cold corpse, forced to be a wife to someone who could never speak or care for them. Some were even cruelly buried alive alongside the dead, or trapped in lonely mourning for the rest of their days, their youth wasted, their lives belonging to no one but the memory of the deceased. Compared to that dark, hopeless fate, what I had now was a gift, warm, real, and full of hope. My heart swelled with gratitude, and I kept working with a soft, happy smile on my face. The clear ringing of the brass bell cut through the air, signaling the end of the morning's work. Just as I'd promised, I was heading straight for Aunt Gui's house for lunch. Walking side by side with the other youths at first, a flutter of nervousness rose in my chest. Would people stare? Would they whisper? But then I relaxed. The path to Aunt Gui's home ran along the same way I always took to return to my place, so my walk looked perfectly natural. I waved goodbye to Xiaolan and the others as they turned toward the collective dormitory, then continued on alone. Most of the married women and older aunts had hurried ahead earlier, rushing home to prepare hot meals for their families, so before long, I was walking quietly by myself, the only sound the soft crunch of my footsteps on the packed earth. Soon enough, I spotted her red brick house and neat courtyard fence. I stepped forward and knocked gently on the wooden gate. It swung open quickly, and out popped Xinjiang, Aunt Gui's third son, just 9 years old, his eyes bright and eager. "Sister Yue," he called out cheerfully, already tugging at my sleeve to lead me in. I greeted him warmly, and he practically skipped as he guided me through the yard. Inside the main room, the table was already neatly set with bowls, chopsticks, and steaming dishes filling the air with mouth-watering scents. Aunt Gui looked up the moment I stepped in, her smile growing wider and warmer than before. "You've come just in time. Go wash your hands. Everyone's ready to eat." I did as told, my cheeks feeling warm with shyness. When I sat down, I bowed my head slightly to them all. "Thank you, truly, thank you all so much for being so kind and welcoming to me." Wanner, her youngest little girl, giggled softly when she saw how flushed my face was, covering her mouth with her small hand. Grandpa Wang leaned forward kindly, his voice gentle and comforting. "There's no need to be so shy, child. Just eat well, fill your stomach, and be at home here." I nodded gratefully, picked up my chopsticks, and ate slowly and steadily, savoring every bite of the warm, home-cooked food, feeling safer and more cherished than I ever had before. When the meal was over, I wouldn't sit idle. I stood up at once, insisting, "Let me wash the dishes, at least let me do this much." Before Aunt Gui could stop me, I carried the bowls and chopsticks to the water basin and set to scrubbing them clean. She just smiled warmly, letting me help, happy to see me so willing to share the work. Then we all headed back to the fields for the afternoon shift. Hours passed slowly under the sun, tending crops and weeding until the work finally drew to a close. Walking home as dusk fell, my mind was already busy planning for tomorrow. Tonight I'd sort and pack my things, making them look like a parcel sent from far away. Tomorrow, I'd pretend to shop at the commune supply store, when in truth, everything I needed was already ready in my basket. I'd learned that our semi-military state-run farm had its own small post office, a small hospital, and several state-run shops we could visit, as well as school up to middle school. As a newly arrived spirit in this era, still unfamiliar with how things worked, and a new comrade, I could easily say my package was addressed to the general commune office for now. Next time, I'd use my official Xinhua State Farm address, and it would all seem perfectly proper. That night, after a simple dinner and a hot, relaxing shower, I carefully put together my package. I folded up a thick warm quilt, 2 fluffy down jackets, and sturdy winter boots. All things that made sense to receive as a care parcel from home. I added 2 jin of fine white rice too. Rice was the daily staple back in Shanghai and the southern provinces, but here in the north it was rare and precious. Even the rice sold officially was coarse and dull, nothing like the plump, fragrant grain from years later. I also packed 2 jeans of fine white flour as part of my package, soft, high-quality flour far better than the rough grain flour usually available here. I also set out an iron pan and a set of bowls and cups, just enough to look like basic supplies I'd picked up. And I'd look for larger, sturdy food containers. Once harvest season arrived, every minute would be precious, so I could cook in batches and keep meals ready in my space instead of rushing to cook every single day. My only real trouble was meat. I had plenty fresh pork, tender chicken, rich beef, but I couldn't just cook them freely. Even though my little red brick house stood a bit apart from the others, the savory smell of meat cooking would drift far and draw unwanted attention. I had to wait for the right moment. Captain Zhao had told us that before the harvest began, the farm would distribute meat rations, 1 jean for each of us young workers, and 2 to 3 jean for every family. I'd just have to be patient until then. It felt frustrating, having all these delicious things within reach, yet not being able to enjoy them as I pleased. I could almost picture my stored chicken and beef waving at me, tempting me to light the stove and cook them right away. I let out a soft sigh. Fish and seafood were another thought. Tomorrow I'd walk along the riverbanks to see what swam in these waters, and check my own supplies to see what I could find there naturally. Then a bold little idea popped into my head. Since I planned to head up the mountains to gather firewood anyway, why not try hunting? Wild boar and plump pheasants roamed these hills, didn't they? I laughed quietly to myself. My hunting skills were only from watching videos online, never tried in real life. But if I brought a few of the other youths along with me, we could try our luck together. If we managed to catch something, it would be a fine excuse to share food, and I could cook my meat without holding back. I knew well enough. They were all just as tired of plain meals and just as eager to have a good piece of meat in their bowls, even once in a while. Satisfied that every plan was in order, I settled down to sleep peacefully. The next morning, I woke right on time and went through my usual quiet routine, stretching, freshening up, and having a light meal. Then I dressed neatly, slung my canvas bag over my shoulder, with a few ration coupons and pocket money tucked safely inside. I hoisted my large woven basket onto my back, secured the straps, and stepped outside. I double-checked that the stove was cold, locked the wooden door tight, and latched the courtyard gate firmly behind me. I walked over to the gathering spot where the sturdy farm tractor with its open trailer was waiting. We only had to pay a small fare, just 5 cents each, to ride along. Not many were heading out today, only a handful of us new youths whose parcels were sent to the general commune office, plus 3 familiar aunties I'd often seen working alongside us. Everyone else who knew how our military-run state farm worked had already collected their mail and packages directly from the farm's own post office days earlier. I waved a cheerful greeting to Yingzi, Jinjin, Jiangua, and Mingyuan, and they replied warmly or with soft nods. I also nodded politely to the aunties. The boys stayed quiet, giving only brief, reserved nods. True to our Quiet 8 name, they spoke little, saving their strength for the hard work ahead. I sat beside Yingzi and Jinjin, chatting lightly with them as the tractor rumbled slowly along the bumpy dirt road. When we finally reached the bustling commune center, I said my goodbyes. Comrade Yingzi, I'll wander around and pick up a few small things first. Go on ahead to the post office to fetch your parcel. I'll catch up soon. Yingzi nodded understandingly. All right, Comrade Yue. Don't be too long, we'll meet back here later. And with that, the group turned toward the post office, while I headed toward the state-run shop with its food counter. I'd planned to get some fine pastries as a special thank you gift for Aunt Gue, but in the end, I only bought a few plain steamed buns to add to my supplies. After all, I still had plenty of delicate Chinese pastries stored away safely in my private space. Next, I went straight to the daily necessities supply shop to look for sturdy food containers. They only sold durable metal lunchboxes in several sizes, exactly what I needed. I picked out 4 large, strong ones, then paid for them with the required industrial coupons and a small sum of cash. I packed them carefully into my big basket, pleased, then headed out. After stepping out of the supply shop, I found a quiet, sheltered spot behind a row of trees. I quickly took out the pan and bowls and arranged the 4 large metal lunchboxes neatly inside my big woven basket, making sure everything fit securely. Then I walked over to the post office. I glanced around casually. Ingzi and the others were already gone, so I knew they'd finished collecting their things. I stepped up to the counter, gave my name, and asked in a calm tone if there was any letter or parcel waiting for me. The attendant flipped through the mail records and shook his head. Nothing had arrived in my name. I thanked him politely and walked back out. I slipped away to a secluded corner, where I quietly brought out my special package from my private space, just as if I'd picked it up officially, and set it gently into the basket. I placed the pan, lunchboxes, and bowls on top, then covered everything neatly with a coarse cloth to keep it hidden. The steamed buns I'd bought earlier were already safely stored in my space, fresh and ready. With a light step, I went to find the rest of the group, a quiet smile playing on my lips. Who would guess the truth? I was far away in the northern countryside, free at last. My aunt and her family might be furious, searching everywhere for me after I fled their cruel plan. But I didn't care. I wouldn't waste a single thought on them anymore. This was my own life now, peaceful and safe, and that was all that mattered. As I walked along, I overheard whispered chatter from a group of youths assigned to the village farm. They were gossiping about the girl who'd sat beside me on the way here, Xiao Hong, I learned her name was. It turned out only 2 days after arriving at the village, she'd deliberately thrown herself into the shallow river, clearly hoping the village chief's handsome son would rush to save her and fall for her in the process. But luck turned cruel. Before he could even step forward, a plain, rough young villager had plunged in and hauled her out, his hands supporting her waist and arms as he pulled her to safety. In these old-fashioned times, such a thing was devastating. A woman's body was supposed to be guarded closely. Once a man had to touch and hold you to rescue you, people whispered that your purity was ruined, your reputation stained beyond repair. There was no talking it away. Custom and pressure said she now had to marry that villager, whether she wanted to or not. And what a bitter match it was, they said. That young man was known across the village as lazy and good-for-nothing, spoiled rotten by his mother who doted endlessly on her only son. He had a passable face, but idle hands and a grumpy temper, nothing compared to the upright, good-looking village chief's son she'd set her heart on. Just then, speak of the devil. There she was, standing red-faced and tearful, shouting furiously at the very youths who were spilling the story. "You're lying. You're all making it up to humiliate me," she shrieked, stamping her feet and swatting at the girl who was speaking. Her hair was messy, eyes swollen, and her voice cracked with panic and anger. The others didn't back down, firing back that everyone in the village already knew the truth, that the match was already being talked about, and her little trick had backfired completely. I watched quietly from a little distance, keeping my expression calm while inside I felt it was like watching a dramatic play unfold right before my eyes. She'd tried to force a sweet romance, but ended up trapping herself in a fate she'd never wanted. Truly a cautionary tale of how tricky schemes can turn into bitter regret. I didn't linger to watch the commotion, but turned away and went on looking for my group. Soon I spotted them inside the state-run restaurant, seated around a table, plates of food before them, and I could even see slices of meat. Clearly they'd been hungry and treating themselves well. When they noticed me standing there, they grew shy all at once, lowering their chopsticks and looking a little embarrassed. I just smiled warmly and waved my hand to show it was fine. They quickly invited me to pull up a chair and join the meal, but I shook my head gently. "Thank you, but I've already bought steamed buns to eat," I said, gesturing to my covered basket. "Go on, finish your food while it's hot, don't mind me at all." I pulled over an empty chair, set my basket down carefully, and sat beside them quietly. As they ate, I spoke up softly. "I've been thinking later, I'd like to head up into the mountains. Maybe we can try hunting for wild boar, or go down to the river to see if we can catch some fish." They all looked up at once, eyes wide with surprise. I went on, fresh game, rabbits, pheasants, even boar, would be such a wonderful addition to our plain meals. We'll just need to ask Captain Zhao first. If he gives permission, we can go properly. Ming Yuan chewed slowly, thought it over carefully, then spoke up. Actually, the boys have talked about this too. We asked the older youths before, and they said they've tried hunting in the hills. They only managed to catch wild rabbits before, but when they did, it was such a fine feast for everyone. Captain Zhao allowed it, so long as we followed the rules and didn't wander too far. If we're lucky enough to catch a big boar, it would be shared out fairly to every family on the farm. Small game like rabbits, though, the hunters could keep for themselves. And if we netted plenty of fish, we could share those too, or keep some for our own meals. We all turned to look at Ming Yuan. He'd spoken far more than usual today, earnest and steady. He met our gazes calmly, not shrinking back like he usually did. Great, I said, beaming. Since it's allowed, would you like to come along with me when we get back to the farm? Ming Yuan and Jian Guan nodded quickly. We'll come, they said. We can also ask the other boys to join, so we'll have more hands and be safer. Yingzi and Jin Jun hesitated, glancing at each other. We're not sure, Yingzi said softly. The mountains are wild, and it might be dangerous. I didn't press them at all. That's perfectly fine, I told them kindly. No need to force yourselves, we can talk more about it and plan everything properly once we're back. Then I stood up, lifted my heavy basket, and settled it securely on my back. Finish your meal slowly, I said. I'll walk around the commune a little longer, then wait for everyone by the tractor when it's time to go home. I waved once more and walked off before they could answer, feeling hopeful and excited about our little plan. I reached the gathering spot first, where Uncle Bai already sat waiting by the tractor. I pulled out a neatly wrapped steamed buns and held it out to him. At first, he waved his hand, reluctant to take it. He'd never been one to accept gifts easily. But I added a handful of sweet milk candies to the package and insisted. I don't have cigarettes or liquor to give you, I said with a light, teasing smile, only these, so you can stay healthy and strong, Uncle Bai. He let out a hearty laugh, eyes crinkling with warmth, and accepted the little bundle. You're a thoughtful girl, young comrade. Thank you. 5 minutes later, the rest of our group came trundling back, arms loaded with their own parcels and purchases. The aunties traveling with us joked that we'd cleared out the whole commune shop with how much we carried. We just chuckled quietly and said nothing, letting them think what they liked. The tractor rumbled back along the familiar road, and soon we were back at Xinhua State Farm. I carried my things steadily toward my little red brick home, pausing only to call over my shoulder to Ming Yuan and the others. I'll come find you later to talk more about our plan. They nodded in reply and headed toward the collective dormitory, while I hurried on to my own place. Once inside, I turned the key and slid the bolt home, setting my heavy basket down gently. I emptied everything out onto the wooden table, the metal lunchboxes, bowls, and the sturdy iron pan. I arranged the cookware neatly in my small kitchen, already thinking I should buy a wooden shelf soon, so I could keep pans, bowls, cups, and dry food supplies organized and tidy. Then I took out a wrapped sweet pastries from my storage as a gift for Aunt Gue and set it in my basket. I slipped a sharp, reliable knife in two, just in case it was needed, and stepped out again. First, I'd deliver the gift, then go find Captain Zhao to ask for permission for our mountain trip. I walked quickly to Aunt Gui's courtyard and knocked softly on the wooden gate. After a moment, it swung open. Chen Jiang stood there looking up at me. Sister. Before he could say more, I pressed the box of pastries into his hands quickly. This is a little gift from me to your family, I whispered. Tell your mother to enjoy them, all right? Before he could call Aunt Gue out to thank me or turn the gift away, I turned and hurried off with a light step. I made straight for the fields and farm offices, and by good luck, I spotted Captain Zhao standing and talking with Uncle Bai. I slowed my pace, walked over respectfully, and gave a polite bow. Excuse me, Captain Zhao, Uncle Bai. Captain Zhao turned to me. What is it, Comrade Yang? I took a breath and spoke clearly. Captain, I would like to go up into the mountains with the others with your permission. We plan to gather plenty of dry firewood first, and if we're lucky, hunt for wild game. catch fish in the streams, or pick wild vegetables to add to our meals. His eyes widened in surprise as he looked at me, then glanced down at my basket. Hunting? That's not a casual trip. There are risks up there. I know the mountains are wild, I pleaded earnestly, but we'll go in a group, and if we could ask someone who knows the trails well and understands hunting to lead us, you won't have to worry about us getting lost or hurt. Uncle Bai let out a deep, warm laugh and tapped Captain Zhao on the shoulder. Let them go, old Zhao. It's good for the young folks to be bold and useful. And my son Bai Shan knows these mountains like the back of his hand. He can lead them. If they happen to bring down a wild boar, that would be a wonderful feast for everyone on the farm. Captain Zhao looked from me to Uncle Bai, sighed softly, and finally nodded. Very well, you have my permission. Uncle Bai hurried off for a short while to fetch his son. While waiting, Captain Zhao leaned over and asked quietly, Yue, why are you so eager to go on this trip? Do you understand clearly how dangerous the mountains can be? I do understand, Captain, I answered sincerely. That is exactly why I came to ask for your approval first, so we can go properly, with a guide, and stay safe. What I didn't know then was that he was already aware of my quiet bond with Gu Yan. Gu Yan himself had come to him recently and asked him to keep a careful eye on me, treating me with extra care. Before long, Uncle Bai returned with Bai Shan, his tall, steady son, carrying a well-kept hunting rifle slung over his shoulder. Together, we walked toward the collective dormitory. When we arrived, the place was quiet but full of purpose. Everyone was already gathered, discussing who would join the mountain trip. When they saw us enter, they fell silent and listened closely. Captain Zhao spoke firmly but fairly. I have given permission for this trip. Bai Shan will lead you. He knows the land and how to stay safe. You must follow his every instruction and obey all rules without question. Then he asked aloud, who among you is ready to go? One by one, people stood up to join. Ming Yuan, Jian Guo, De Wei, and Xiao Cheng for steady, reliable young men. Xiao Lan, Chen Hua, and Man Ying, three brave, capable girls, plus team leaders Li and Wang, who would help keep order and watch over everyone. Seeing our good-sized group, Captain Zhao's face softened a little. Stay alert, stick together, and be careful at every step. Gather whatever useful things you can find, and most importantly, come back safe and sound before dark. He turned to Bai Shan and added, keep your eyes open and guard the group well. It is summer now. Most wild animals are not aggressive this season, busy with their own young and foraging, so you'll be safer than in colder months, but never let your guard down. Bai Shan nodded solemnly, resting a hand on his rifle. I will, Captain. We'll take good care of each other. A quiet excitement filled the room as we got ready. This would be an adventure, a chance to work together, and bring back something good for all of us. The 11 of us set off toward the mountain, each carrying woven baskets and simple tools, nets for fishing, wooden spears, and ropes for hunting. Bai Shan led the way, telling us, if we're lucky, we can stop at the small river first. The waters here are full of crucian carp, plump perch, silver carp, tiny minnows, and slender lennox trout. Good, tasty fish perfect for a meal. He suggested we split up, some fish while we waited, and the rest could head ahead to set traps for small game. We all agreed happily. We split into two groups. Team leader Li, Jian Guo, Chen Hua, and I went down to the river, while the others marched ahead to clear spots and dig pit traps at the forest edge. As we walked, we kept our eyes on the ground, picking up dry branches, twigs, and fallen pine boughs, tucking them into our baskets so we'd have plenty of fuel for cooking and heating later. Soon we reached the small river. The water was so limpid and crystal clear that we could easily see smooth pebbles, swaying water weeds, and silvery fish gliding just beneath the surface. Right away, we spotted schools of fish swimming slowly in the gentle current, not far from the bank. Team leader Li and Jian Guo quickly unfolded the fine mesh net, checking the twine and weights to make sure it hung straight and strong. Chen Hua and I wandered along the bank to look for wild vegetables. Wild amaranth, shepherd's purse, or water spinach, but found none growing nearby, so we turned back to watch and help with the fishing. The water was shallow, only reaching up to our calves, so it was safe to wade in, but we waited quietly on the bank to let the men work first. Slowly and carefully, Team Leader Li and Jian Guo waded into the stream, lowering the net gently so it wouldn't startle the fish. They moved outward in a wide curve, herding the swimming fish toward the shallower bend where they had no way to escape. When the fish were crowded together inside the mesh, they gave a quick signal and hauled the edges up fast. The net rose dripping with water, full of wriggling silver bodies, plump cushion carp, shiny silver carp, and bright little perch splashing in the sunlight. Chunhua and I hurried to help pull the net fully ashore, scooping the fish into one of our large baskets. Just then, I caught sight of a larger, darker fish slipping through the shallows a little way off. "Look, there's a bigger one over there," I called, and they quickly reset the net to try again. While they waited for the fish to gather, I said to Chunhua, "I'll go gather a little more firewood nearby. You keep an eye on them here." I didn't wander far, just stepped along the bank to pick up more dry sticks. Then I turned toward a thick, lush clump of bushes growing around a bend. Suddenly, I heard a low, steady chomping sound, crunch, munch, crunch, like something large was eating loudly just behind the foliage. My heart gave a hard thud against my ribs. I stepped closer slowly, lifted a branch gently, and peeked through the leaves. Right there, not far away, stood a plump, strong wild boar, rooting around and munching wild greens and thick grass, completely unaware of me. My breath caught. I stepped back slowly, quietly, then turned and hurried, almost running. Back to the riverbank, making sure not to make a loud sound. Then I set my basket down fast and waved frantically at Team Leader Li and Jian Guo, not daring to shout loud enough to scare the beast away. Chunhua saw my flushed face and wide eyes and panicked instantly. Team Leader Li noticed my urgent, silent waving and knew at once something was wrong. He signaled Jian Guo to stop. They waded quickly out of the water, carrying the big fish they'd just caught, and hurried over to me. I pointed breathlessly toward the bend where I'd come from. "There, behind the bushes. A big, fat wild boar is eating there." Team Leader Li's expression turned serious. "Stay calm, no one runs off alone. Everyone move up to that higher slope right now, stay together where it's safer." He pointed to a gentle rise nearby, then turned to us. "I'll run up and call Comrade Bai and the rest of the group. Stay put and keep quiet until we're back." And with that, he sprinted up the hillside toward where the others were working. We hurried up the gentle slope with our baskets and stood close together, waiting quietly. It wasn't long before we spotted the others coming, moving fast, but stepping lightly, careful not to make a single loud sound that might give them away. As soon as they drew near, I quickly pointed down toward the thick bushes where I'd seen the boar. Comrade Bai, Team Leader Li, and all the young men gripped their tools, spears, sturdy wooden poles, and thick ropes, and slipped silently down the slope toward the spot. Us girls stayed back on higher ground, watching with bated breath, ready to help if needed, but keeping safely out of the way. When they reached the clump of foliage, there it was, the big, fat boar, still busily munching wild greens, unaware of the danger closing in. Comrade Bai signaled quietly, assigning each man a position, some to block its path forward, others to stand ready to strike or snare it. They moved in slow, steady steps, closing the circle little by little. But then one of the men stepped on a dry twig that snapped sharply. The boar's head snapped up, ears pricked, and with a loud snort it panicked. It turned and charged straight toward the men, hooves thudding hard against the earth. It was a frightening sight, but the men didn't flinch. They stood firm and swarmed together instantly. They held out their poles to keep it from rushing past, aiming to slow it down. Because it was so heavy and plump, it couldn't run fast or turn sharply like a leaner beast. It lumbered and struggled to pick up speed. They pressed in together, guiding it away from open ground, until at last they managed to loop strong ropes around its thick body and pin it down safely. When it was finally still and secured, Comrade Bai let out a breath and looked around thoughtfully. "I think I understand now," he said. "This fat boar must have wandered down from higher ground earlier, slipped and tumbled down this slope. It was too heavy to climb back up the steep, loose earth alone, so it got trapped down here and stayed to feed on the wild plants while it was stuck. Once the boar was firmly bound with thick hemp rope, us girls carefully made our way down the slope to join them. I slung my basket over my shoulder and walked over to the spot where the boar had been feeding. There, just as I'd noticed earlier, grew lush clusters of tender wild greens. "I'm going to gather these fresh greens," I told everyone. Team leader Wang nodded and came over to help me, bending to pluck the crisp leaves and stems alongside me. Meanwhile, the young men searched the woods for sturdy straight trees, cutting down 3 thick, solid trunks to use as carrying poles. But the boar was still alive, straining against its ropes and grunting fiercely, too dangerous to carry while struggling. Comrade Bai stepped forward with steady resolve. He knew what had to be done. With a quick, skilled movement, he ended the boar's suffering cleanly, so it would be safe to transport. We all set to work busily. I filled one basket after another with plump shepherd's purse, its fresh green leaves so precious in these times. All the while, I kept my eyes on the ground, gathering armfuls of dry branches and twigs, stacking them neatly. When we returned to the riverbank, the others had been busy too. They'd caught more fish, and the sight of our fine haul made everyone's eyes light up with delight. Then came the climb back up the slope. We carried baskets brimming with silvery fish, fresh wild greens, and bundles of dry firewood, while the heavy fat boar rested across the poles. Even with all the men lifting together, it was so heavy it dragged slightly. Team leader Wang and Manning stepped in at once, lending their strong arms to help bear the weight. Chunhua, Sholan, and I took the lighter baskets we could easily manage and walked ahead, leaving the large basket of fish for the others to bring up more slowly. Halfway up, we set down our loads and hurried back to lend a hand. More hands made lighter work after all. We pulled and lifted together, moving step by slow step, until finally we reached the top. We lowered the boar gently to the ground, panting hard but breaking into breathless, happy chuckles. We sank down to rest for a moment, wiping sweat from our brows. Then Team Leader Lee, Comrade Bai, and Dewey went back down to fetch the big basket of fish. When they returned, Comrade Bai gave clear instructions. "We must go back to check our traps, see if we've caught anything else. Someone needs to run ahead and tell Captain Zhao we've had great luck and need more hands to carry everything back." Xiaolan volunteered right away. She lifted the basket full of shepherd's purse and set off quickly toward the farm. Meanwhile, team leader Wang, Chunhua, Manning, and I stayed behind. I didn't waste a single minute. Once more I wandered off to gather more dry firewood, filling my basket until it was overflowing. I'd quietly slipped my sharp knife back into my private space earlier, along with extra armfuls of wood I'd put away for later. Team leader Wang watched me stacking yet another bundle and laughed heartily. "Yue, you're never satisfied. You've already got more wood than anyone else." I just smiled and shrugged. Better to have too much than too little. Warmth and fire are never wasted. When my basket was full, I set it down safely and walked even further up the hillside to gather more. Man-Ing came along beside me. Years of hard farm work had made her tall and strong, far more powerful than I was. We returned soon after, carrying tightly bound bundles of firewood in our arms. We sat resting, waiting, until at last we heard the sound of hurried footsteps and voices drawing near. It was Captain Zhao himself, followed by the rest of the sent-down youths, Uncle Bai, Uncle Chen, Grandpa Wang, and all the able-bodied male farmers from the farm. When they caught sight of the huge fat boar lying there and our piles of full baskets, their eyes went wide with pure shock and amazement. A few of the youths and farmers hurried past us to help the others coming up behind. Captain Zhao walked straight over to us, his face showing clear worry, but when he saw the boar, he looked us over quickly. "Is everyone all right? Did anyone get hurt?" We shook our heads firmly and answered together, "We're all fine, Captain." Not a scratch on any of us. After what felt like another long wait, the rest of our group finally appeared, trudging up the slope with proud, beaming faces. They hadn't just caught one boar, They'd caught 2 more wild boars, 3 plump pheasants, and 10 fat rabbits, plus even more bundles of firewood. We all laughed aloud at that. Yes, we really were crazy about gathering firewood. But seeing all this bounty, fresh meat and fish and greens to share with every family on the farm, we knew every bit of hard work was worth it. Each of us bore our loads steadily, straining a little but filled with joy. I carried my own basket brimming with dry firewood, while others heaped their strength into carrying the baskets of silvery fish, the massive fat wild boar, the 2 other boars, plump pheasants, fat rabbits, and armfuls of firewood and fresh wild greens. When we reached the wide assembly ground, we set down our burdens one by one, arranging everything neatly on the packed earth. Others straggled in after us, adding the pile until the ground was covered with fresh meat, glistening fish, and fragrant bundles of wood. We paused for a moment, breathing deeply to catch our breath, wiping sweat from our brows and smiling proudly at our great harvest. Captain Zhao stepped forward, his voice loud and clear to everyone gathered. Now we will divide everything fairly among all of us. The firewood and wild greens are for you sent down youths to keep. You worked hard to gather them, so enjoy them well. As for the 3 pheasants and 10 rabbits, we'll share them out equally, with Comrade by getting his proper share too. I raised my hand politely and spoke up. Captain, I only ask for 1 gene of rabbit meat and a half gene of pheasant. That is more than enough for me. Team leader Wang nodded, picked up her pen and notebook, and wrote my request down carefully. Comrade Bai spoke next with a hearty laugh. Then I'll take 2 rabbits and 1 pheasant. Good for a fine meal with my family. That too was recorded promptly. Now for the fish, Captain Zhao went on. Most are good-sized, mixed with a few smaller ones, so we'll give 1 fish to each household, and 1 to each of you youths as well. Team leader Wang counted carefully. 135 local families, plus us youths. She jotted the number down neatly to make sure no one was missed. Then came the biggest task of all, weighing the wild boars. The 2 smaller ones were lifted onto the scale first. Together they weighed 450 gene, plenty of meat for everyone. Then came the giant fat boar. It took 8 strong men just to hoist it onto the scale, grunting and struggling until the beam finally settled. 721 gene. Everyone gasped in amazement. It was rare to see such a huge beast, almost too heavy to believe, but the scale didn't lie. Captain Zhao nodded slowly, pleased. This is a rare, wonderful blessing. We will divide it fairly and reward those who worked hardest. They calculated quickly and generously. Every one of the 135 households would receive 4 full gene of fresh boar meat, enough to add rich, savory flavor to meals for days. All us sent-down youths, who had climbed, carried, and worked tirelessly to bring the boars down, would get 6 gene each, a larger share as a reward for our strength and teamwork. And to honor Comrade Bai, who led the hunt, knew the mountains like his own home, and guided us safely, he was given a special portion of 10 gene, well-deserved respect for his skill and leadership. When the counting was done, there was still a fine surplus left over. That extra meat would be carefully set aside. Some to be shared with the nearby border defense soldiers standing guard for our country, some given to the elderly and sick folks on the farm who needed nourishment most, and the rest stored safely for busy harvest days or coming festivals. Every face was bright with joy and gratitude. Standing there among our harvest, I felt a warm, full feeling in my heart. Today wasn't just about having plenty to eat, but about working together, sharing fairly, and knowing that we were building a good life side by side. Comrade Bai raised his voice, warm and sincere, to speak to everyone gathered. Before we go our separate ways, I want to give thanks to all you young folks who came along today. You worked hard, carried heavy loads, and didn't complain once. And there is one more person we must thank especially. Without her sharp eyes and quick thinking, we would never have brought home such an abundance of meat today. He turned his gaze straight toward me. Team leader Li and the others who had been with me on the slope all turned to look at me too, smiling warmly and nodding in agreement. It was Comrade Yue who first spotted that huge fat boar hidden in the bushes, Comrade Bai said clearly. And instead of panicking or running off alone, she quietly slipped away and quickly informed Team Leaderly, giving us the chance to surround and catch it safely. If not for her, that precious boar would have wandered away unseen. Team Leaderly stepped forward at once to add his praise. That's not all. She was the first to spot the biggest, largest fish in the river too. We wouldn't have caught that fine catch without her sharp eyes. My face burned hot, and I lowered my head shyly, twisting the hem of my shirt. I was already flustered and overwhelmed by so many kind words and all eyes turning toward me. Then Team Leader Wang spoke up loudly as well. And let's not forget, she gathered more firewood than anyone else today. She also found the patch of tender shepherd's purse that added fresh greens to our meals. It feels as though good luck followed her every step. And most importantly, every single one of us who went up the mountain came back safe and sound, not a single scratch or injury among us. The other sent-down youths nodded vigorously, murmuring in agreement. They all felt the same way. Then Captain Zhao spoke up, his tone softer but full of meaning. I must admit, when Comrade Young first came to me to ask for permission to go up the mountain and pleaded so earnestly to let you go together with proper guides, I hesitated. I knew there were risks. He let out a long, quiet sigh before continuing. Truth be told, if anything bad had happened to her, I would have had a very hard time explaining myself to that person. A hush fell over the crowd instantly. Everyone looked stunned, exchanging quiet, surprised glances. That remark carried so much weight. Who was this person that even Captain Zhao had to be so careful and accountable? Whispers started to spread. She must have a remarkable family background, perhaps high-ranking relatives back in the city or in the military. Just then, Aunt Gui stepped forward, her voice light but carrying a knowing tone that made everyone's attention sharpen even more. I am truly so glad Yue came back safe and well too, she said with a soft chuckle. Otherwise, I would have been in great trouble as well, having to give endless explanations to that very same person. Now everyone stared at me with new respect and curiosity, eyes wide with wonder, guessing and wondering who this mysterious person could be. Was it a high-ranking officer? A powerful leader? They could not figure it out, but one thing was clear. I was far more special and protected than I appeared to be. I stood there, my heart beating a little faster, knowing well in my heart who Aunt Gui meant. It was Gu Yan, the earnest soldier who had already made his feelings clear and asked to look after me. But I kept my head bowed, a faint, shy smile on my face, letting them guess as they pleased, not revealing a single word of our quiet growing affection. Finally, I found my voice and spoke up, my cheeks still warm. Please, you really mustn't praise me so highly. I only followed what my eyes saw and what my heart told me to do, nothing more. If anything was found, it was simply luck on our side, that is all. Captain Zhao stepped forward then, smiling faintly to quiet the murmurs and turn us back to the business at hand. Enough praise for one day, let us turn this fine catch into proper shares for everyone. The butchers will begin dressing the boars shortly, so every household may receive their meat fresh. The fish were distributed first, counted, and handed out carefully. To my surprise, Team Leaderly personally brought forward the very largest fish, the one I had spotted gliding through the river shallows, and placed it gently into my basket. This one is yours, Comrade Yue. You saw it first, and it's only right. Thank you, Team Leaderly, I said gratefully, holding the heavy, silvery fish with both hands. He nodded. The pheasants, rabbits, and your share of boar meat and wild greens will be brought to your home later. No need to carry it all now. Go on back and rest, you've done enough for one day. I simply nodded. No rush at all, whenever it's convenient for you. With that, I waved goodbye to everyone, settled my basket securely on my back, and set off toward my little red brick house. The sun was already dipping low toward the horizon, painting the sky in soft gold and deepening orange. I walked at a steady pace, the day's excitement slowly settling in my mind. Then I suddenly realized, with all the early morning rush and the long day spent up the mountain, I had completely forgotten to eat my lunch. I chuckled softly to myself, shaking my head. How could I forget such a thing? As soon as I stepped inside and bolted the door, I quietly slipped the large fish into my private storage space, fresh, glistening, and perfectly preserved, ready whenever I needed it. I mentally inventoried my treasures: the silvery fish, tender shepherd's purse, pheasant meat, plump rabbit, and rich boar meat will be all infinite in my storage. I truly had an endless supply now. Afterward, I neatly stacked my newly gathered firewood alongside the pile I'd collected over the past days, arranging each log so it would dry evenly and keep my home warm. Then I took a cloth and wiped down my table, swept the earthen floor, and straightened my bedding. Now all I had to do was keep my place neat and tidy and wait quietly for them to arrive with the rest of my share. Once I had swept and tidied every corner, I placed the kettle over the stove and reached for a few coal briquettes to light beneath it. The flames caught steadily, and soon water began to warm, sending soft steam curling upward. I fetched my largest metal basin and set it ready. This way, whoever comes, I could place the big fish right here in plain sight. The sun had barely dipped below the horizon when I heard footsteps and voices outside my wooden gate. I quickly brought the fish out from my storage and set it gently into the basin. Then I lit the oil lamp, stepped to the gate, and pulled it open. Standing there were team leader Wang, Jiangua, and Xiulan, each carrying portions of my share. "Please come in," I said warmly, stepping aside to let them pass. I led them through to the kitchen, where they set down their loads. Along with the meat, fish, and wild greens, they had also brought extra bundles of firewood, stacking them neatly beside my own pile. I set out a second large basin to receive the cuts of boar, pheasant, and rabbit meat. "Come, please rest a moment," I invited them into the main room. I poured 3 cups of hot sugar water and pressed them into their hands. "I only have 2 chairs," I explained, "so one of you may sit comfortably on the kang instead. Please don't stand on ceremony." I truly don't mind at all. They hesitated at first, not wishing to impose, but I had already placed the cups in their hands, so they settled down gratefully. Team leader Wang took a slow sip and spoke up kindly. "You needn't trouble yourself cooking tonight, Yue. The rest of us will have a feast at the dormitory. There is more meat than any of us could finish, so you are welcome to join us." I smiled and nodded. "Then I shall not be polite, thank you for inviting me." Xiulan looked around the room with admiration, her gaze moving over my neatly arranged bedding and my dresser. "Your home is so neat and clean, Comrade Yue. Everything has its place, and there is not a speck of dust anywhere. It is nothing like our dormitory, where things are always scattered and piled, no matter how we try." I smiled gently. "It is simply my habit. I feel more at peace when things are orderly." Team leader Wang chuckled softly. "I've no doubt of it. If you lived in the dormitory, I believe you would never stop cleaning from dawn till dark. It is truly a blessing that you have your own quiet place here, just as well suited to you as you are to it." When they had finished their drinks, they stepped out into the courtyard while I quickly moved the meat, fish, and greens into my private storage space, everything vanishing silently, leaving only the empty basins and the neatly stacked firewood behind. Then I took a sealed jar of preserved peaches from my storage, tucked it carefully into my canvas bag, and stepped outside. I pulled the door shut behind me, turned the key in the lock, and joined them. As we walked toward the dormitory, the rich, savory scent of pork drifted from every courtyard we passed, sweet, fatty, and mouth-watering. We could hear children's voices ringing out happily, chattering excitedly that tonight they would eat tender meat. Some families were rendering the fat into clear golden oil to cook with later, others hung the meat over low smoke to cure and preserve it. Still others strung strips beneath the eaves to dry in the cool evening air, turning them into savory jerky that would last for weeks. We smiled at the joyful sounds and hurried our steps toward the dormitory. It was just as lively there, even more so. With 77 youths living together, their combined share of meat was truly impressive. Team leader Wang told me they had agreed to manage their provisions wisely, stretching the feast across many days so they could enjoy meat regularly all the way through the busy harvest. They planned to cure portions in salt and spices, air-dry strips into jerky, smoke large cuts for deep flavor, and render every scrap of fat into precious cooking oil. They would also salt and store some in earthen jars and hang well-smoked pieces in cool, shaded corners to keep them good for months. So none of this bounty would ever go to waste. When we stepped into the large dining hall, it was warm and buzzing with cheerful chatter. Everyone sat together, laughing and talking while waiting for the meal to be ready, while others bustled busily in the kitchen preparing the pots and fires. "Sit down and rest with the others, Yue," team leader Wang told me gently. "There's no need for you to work tonight." I shook my head with a smile. "Thank you, but I'd rather come help you in the kitchen." Once inside the warm kitchen, I reached into my canvas bag and handed her the sealed glass jar of golden preserved peaches. She stared at it, then up at me, eyes wide with happy disbelief. "So this is what you were hiding in your bag all this time?" I nodded. After such a rich, meaty meal, something sweet and fruity will feel so refreshing. If you slice the peaches into small cubes and steep them in hot water with a little sugar, you'll have a warm, sweet drink enough for everyone to taste a little luxury tonight. Her face lit up with delight. What a wonderful thought. It will be the perfect finish to such a feast. She called over Qianbing at once. "Come help us. Slice these peaches carefully, boil them in water, and sweeten the juice. We'll serve a cup to everyone." Soon the kitchen filled with the warm, honeyed scent of ripe peaches mingling with the savory aroma of roasting meat, two fine gifts, shared freely among friends. That night stretched warm and joyful for everyone across the farm, bowls heaped high with savory meat, voices rising in laughter, and stories shared long after the sun had set. Full bellies and light hearts made it a night none of us would soon forget. When it was time for me to head home, Team Leader Li and Team Leader Wang insisted on walking me back. "Rest well tonight," they said gently at my gate. "Tomorrow we return to the fields, fresh and strong." I nodded gratefully. "Thank you both for seeing me safely home." Stepping inside, I lit my oil lamp, casting a soft golden glow over my room. I wasn't ready to sleep just yet. Tonight was perfect for cooking ahead, so I wouldn't have to rush later. I slipped into my private space to wash my hands thoroughly, then brought out fine white rice, rich boar meat, and the big fresh fish. I set the pheasant and rabbit aside for another day. Tonight was for these two fine catches. First, I sliced the boar meat neatly into bite-sized cubes, trimming away the fat to render separately. I blanched the meat in boiling water to remove impurities, then poured the cloudy water away. Once my wok was clean and dry, I started cooking the blanched meat into tender, sweet savory braised pork, simmering it slowly until it glistened in thick, rich sauce. While it simmered, I cleaned the fish thoroughly, slicing the firm flesh into thick fillets. I heated oil in my pan and fried some slices until golden and crisp, then set those aside in my washed lunchbox. The rest I cut into smaller pieces to make a piping hot, spicy fish soup after, with fragrant chili, ginger, and aromatic spices. Whenever I finished a pot of water or wash, I poured it far away and scrubbed every basin with soap and water, making sure no strong odors lingered that might draw wild animals or insects near. Once the braised meat was perfectly tender, I packed it carefully into one of my large lunchboxes and set it safely in my storage space. I washed the wok spotless again, then steamed a pot of fluffy white rice. By then the fish spicy soup was bubbling beautifully, its rich, spicy aroma filling the room. I poured the soup into another deep container, and soon everything was neatly packed away. I smiled to myself. These sturdy, deep lunchboxes were a true blessing. I placed each hot dish into my space, and as soon as they settled there, they stayed perfectly warm, fresh, and endless, never spoiling, never running out, ready whenever I needed a meal. I stored the fluffy rice the same way, keeping it soft and steaming hot. Last of all came rendering the fat. I tossed the pork fat into the wok on low heat, letting it slowly melt down into clear golden oil. While it simmered gently, I lit my Kong bed to warm through, then slipped into my space for a long, soothing hot bath. The warm water washed away every trace of tiredness, leaving my muscles loose and my spirit light, pure comfort. When I stepped out, the fat was done, pure, glistening oil and crispy golden cracklings. I took the empty jar that had held my preserved peaches, poured the clear oil into it, and filled another jar with the savory cracklings. Both went into my storage too, now endless and lasting forever. Infinity and beyond, I whispered to myself and chuckled softly at my own silly thought. I sat by the lamp to dry my hair slowly, combing it smooth and soft. By the time I finished, the night was deep, well past midnight. I climbed onto the warm, fragrant Kong, pulled my blanket close, and let my eyes drift shut. My heart was full, my supplies secure, and sleep came easy and sweet.